Okay, everyone. Now I'm going to share with you some audio and video clips that I found interesting. Jennifer was kind enough to send me over 25 hours of footage. Yes, there's video of her and Travis driving in a car talking about coffee. I'm going to spare those for you, but I'd like to take about 30 minutes here and just share some of the more interesting behind-the-scenes kind of clips that she sent me. And first up, we have an audio-only call of, I think this is Don Walton talking to APRO. We think that's what this is. We're not sure because it literally happened while Travis was missing over 46 years ago. It's actually two calls, but they're both here in file 2. Can we play that 3-minute clip, please? File 2.
Okay, Walton is back.
Oh, really?
Really. According to him, he was let out last night about midnight, about a mile from where they picked him up.
Jeez.
He says he was in the craft that period of time, but as far as any comment on anything else, we got nothing, except that he did call the sheriff by phone. He called his brother first, and his brother picked him up. And they've got him in a hospital now, giving him a medical exam. And when he clears from that, he has talked to the sheriff on the phone and made an appointment to be interviewed by him. So that's all they have on that so far.
Okay, now could you take us back to this morning when whoever it was that first got word that he was back, give us a rundown from that point?
Okay, what happened was that Grant Neff, which is my brother-in-law, married to my sister, he got a telephone call. And he answered it, and his voice told him, he said, well, Grant, he said, this is Travis. I'm back. And I need help. And he says, wait a minute, fella. He says, you got the wrong number. I'm sorry. And he says, don't hang up on me, Grant. He says, this is Travis. He says, I need help bad. So he figured out that it was the truth then, so he asked him where he was at, and he said he was in a telephone booth out by the ENCO station in Heber. And he said, please help me real bad. And then, Grant hung up and went to get my brother Dwayne, and Dwayne and him drove out there. Well, they found Travis curled up on the floor of the telephone booth. He was sleeping or passed out. I don't know quite for sure just exactly which one of the two he was at, but he was in terrible shape. They brought him home, and they weighed him. He'd lost 12 pounds. He said he hadn't eaten in 5 days. They asked him what happened. He said, well, when I run for the flying saucer, he said, it felt like I run into a brick wall. He said, when I come out of it, he said, I had violent headaches and wouldn't quit. And they asked him what he saw, and he said, well, he said, first of all, he said, I know I was in outer space because he said that all I could see was stars, and he said it looked like planets. And he said, I'm not sure, but he said it was black. It was as black as could be except for that, no light. He didn't see any sun. And they said, what else did he see? And he said, well, he said he knew they took me out took him out in one ship, and he said when they were getting ready to dock with the big ship, he said he saw 4 others, but none of them were all the same shape. He said that when they got him in there, they laid him out on a table, and we asked him what happened then, and he said, well, he couldn't talk about it. He'd have to talk to somebody that could understand. And he said, but I'll tell you one thing. He said, I was laying on a table, and he said the people that I saw were such that they were human form. He said he said they looked kind of gross to him. Evidently, they poked a tube in him instead of a needle in his arm, and he had a big puncture wound in his arm. And it went right into where the vein was. Basically, that was it. They brought him back and dropped him off at Heber in the middle of the highway at the top of the hill above Heber, which is approximately about a mile and a half from the town itself.
I see. And then did they take him right to the hospital from there?
Yes, we took him from here. We didn't want anybody to get involved with it here. The police here is harassing us pretty bad, so we sneaked him out of here and got him down to Phoenix to see Spaulding. Spaulding made the arrangements from there.
Well, is he in the hospital at Phoenix?
No, he's in Tucson.
Oh, Tucson. Oh, I see. Okay, is that Tucson organization, are they doing anything about this?
They said DSW, yeah. They're the ones that's going to run most of the tests. They got Dr. Lester Stewart to run the progressive hypnotist test on them and see what. But he said on the news tonight, I haven't been down there yet. We're waiting to get clearance to come on down. But tonight, Dr. Lester Dr. William Spaulding said that it was either the greatest, it was the best hoax that's ever been pulled, or else it's the most fantastic UFO sighting.
Uh-huh.
He said after the test, he'll be able to tell them. They put him on the spot, and he had to, ride the fence more or less.
Yes.
But he said after the test, they would know more about it.
Okay, now how about that the lie detector test they gave the 5 or 6 witnesses? How did that turn out?
Turned out positive that they were telling the truth.
I'll be darned. Well, that's the kind of evidence we like.
Mm-hmm. Showed that they positively told the truth.
I love that. I think it's really great. It's raw, it's real, it's a recording that happened right then. That was the day he was brought back. So that's pretty incredible. Okay, this next clip is another audio clip. It's a little bit longer. It's about 10, 12 minutes long. And it's Travis speaking to Dwayne Smith. Obviously, we couldn't get Dwayne Smith today. He passed away along with Alan Dallas years ago. But this is a call that Travis made with Dwayne years after the event. And it gives us a little insight to these guys recounting the story. And I just found it fascinating of him and Dwayne years later talking about the incident, years after the incident. This is file 3.
Hello?
Hello, is this Dwayne?
Yeah.
Hey.
Is this Travis?
Yeah.
All right. Very good.
All
I
right.
guess you've been doing all right. I see you do a lot of touring.
Yeah.
Your
So,
name again is
how you been?
Yeah, hey, I've been all right. Been up, been down. Trying to get my sugar balance right now. How much time you got? No, I'm doing pretty good today. I'm not working right now. I think Paranormal Witness, the deal you guys did on Paranormal Witness is the best thing I've seen yet.
Yeah, that was definitely the best show that's been done in the last 37 years.
Yeah, yep. I think before that was UFOs Are Real, I think was the closest.
Yeah, they did a good job, too.
But anything else, I liked what you said at the end of Paranormal Witness. That's your own problem. If you don't believe it, that's your own problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's the, like Steve and them said, my brothers and sisters still don't believe me,
Mm-hmm.
And, I want to ask you, why did Marlon Gillespie say that act like he's never seen a UFO before?
Yeah, he told you guys he'd seen them. See,
yeah, you weren't there. That's right. You were still coming back.
I've got emails from several people who say that privately he's much more believing. He just decided to act skeptical on camera.
Yeah. Well, see, the reason he said it back then was because he was an elected official.
Yeah. Well, he's still an elected official. He's not the sheriff. I
thought he was retired.
No, he's a county supervisor now.
Oh, so that's why he's still got to be skeptic.
Yeah.
That's what he told us straight, because it was between Snowflake and Holbrook where he got stopped in the middle of the road. They come over in front of him. He said, "You ought to say anything about this, I'll just deny it."
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Because I'm an elected position."
Yeah. Somebody sent me some of those old pictures from back then. Man, weren't we a bunch of long-haired guy? I can't believe how we looked.
Well, once you disappeared, got knocked down. That's all I tell everybody. He got knocked down. Last time I seen him, he was landing like a dead body on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to the floorboard and started grabbing my ankles, saying a prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mike finally gets the truck started and starts jetting out of the woods. And hell, we didn't get far enough away before he stops. And I actually said to him, "If you don't start again," and I said it real slow like that, kind of demeaning or whatever. I said, "If you don't start, I will hit you in the back of the head." He pulls the emergency brake on, or jams the emergency brake on. He leans over and pulls the truck door open, shoves the door open and rolls out. And that's when he yells at us, "All of you, get out of the truck," I remember it like it was last night. And
Wow. Well, I wished I could have talked to you more, you know.
Huh?
They said, I wished I could have talked to you more about stuff that would happen like that when I wasn't there, because, you know.
Everybody, it seems like everybody was real close to, you know, each other's talk, you know, because I've told the story so many times, and some of it I might be a little, I know. I remember like it was last night.
Well, yeah, but, you know, everybody remembers some things that other people don't remember or didn't pay attention to. Of course, if you were to, you know, tell that part of it while they were standing there, then they go, yeah, okay, I remember that, you know. But
do you remember just before you got under the edge of it, that it started rocking?
Yeah, it sort of made a rocking and sort of was rising up.
And that's the first time I headed for the floorboard. I was in that seat behind Mike, the doors tied, or I'd have pulled the door open and I'd been gone. I'd have been running through the woods.
Yeah.
But I went down and I was honestly talking to God. I was saying, I'll give up everything, you know, this and that. And then all of a sudden, I hear like a huge generator kick on, and then it kind of a grinding like that Tesla. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah,
Tesla?
it was like powering up and getting ready to.
Yeah.
I think there was
I worked. Huh?
Yeah, like a charge in the air.
Right, and I have done electrical for 19 years. Okay, and I've been in, you know, being a journeyman and everything. I've been up in some huge cabinets. You know, I'm talking 164,000 K electricity. And when we pull that knife on, that handle on, that's the sound it makes. You know, just a big old grinding like it. And then that grind of that spark that had to have been the spark that hit you.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it's just as you got under the thing, all I could think of, it wasn't shooting a beam at you. I think it was, what was holding it up is it was like
the energy.
Electricity.
I think I closed the spark gap there.
When you described the hit as 1,000 baseball bats hitting you from every direction at the same time, by golly, I've been hit by electricity before, and I know what you're talking about. Boom, and then, you know, then I think it was Steve in the back. He yells out, "Hell, it got him," or something. You know, I can't remember the exact.
It killed him.
It wasn't like Shucky. It wasn't like Shucky Poo. Darn, he's down. You know, it wasn't like that. And I had to lean over with my head on the front seat, looking out that back window to see you. But when I came back up, as I was coming up, the trees were lit up brilliantly and everything, and I thought it was bright green light, you know. But later on, I have seen halogen lights hitting the trees out in the woods, the pine trees, and that's what it was. Just brilliant, bright light made those trees look like it was fluorescent green.
Yeah, you know, I never thought about all those green trees reflecting that light, you know.
Yeah. Okay,
that
so
would affect the color.
How many saw the spark that got you? Actually, they all said it was blue, right? Yeah,
that's the way I you know.
And so it comes out on the movies as a blue beam coming down. But if you look and you get a static shock coming across somebody's carpet and hit that doorknob, look at that little spark off your finger. It is blue and it is outlined with green.
Oh.
That's a static spark. So, anyways, as I got back around, you were still in the air like you were doing a side straddle hop, going over backwards. And from the lighting from that thing or whatever, the time of day, well, I could see the pain in your face. You were, it hurt you bad.
It was like electrocution. You know, Steve said it threw me like 20 feet.
Maybe. What made me know where it was, one of those sash piles that we had there, you landed right in front of it. And then the trees in the background kind of made a V, and it was low where that thing was sitting, hanging, floating, whatever you want to call it, you know what I mean? But you went over backwards. I mean, it was like slow motion. I don't know how far it actually threw you, maybe 10. You were in the air for a minute. going backwards. And when you landed, you just flopped like a clean shot animal.
Yeah, that's what they said.
There you were. Huh?
Yeah, that's what they said.
Yeah. That's what I said, too. You didn't remember it. I mean, you remember the hit when you got under it, right?
Yeah, that's it.
But, yeah. Oh, on the Paranormal Witness, I think that's the only thing is a little bit of the story when we met you at Dwayne's house in Maryville. I mean, we actually went there to see you, you know. And
really? I don't remember that, but
yeah, and the movie is You Came to Us or something like that, I think. I mean, in Paranormal Witness. No, we came to see you, but the reasoning was a little bit different, I guess.
Man, I don't even remember that.
That was, 2 or 3 days after they brought you back, you know, and after we did the polygraph examinations and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Your brother told us when he came in and told us that you were back, that freaked us out, you know. That still kind of puts a cowpox tear in the corner of my eye, you know, the thought of Dwayne and your younger brother came in.
Hearing these calls is so awesome to me. It's so different than doing an interview with me. They're just, you know, they're on guard or whatever. They're crafting their story. These are two guys that know each other and experience the same thing, recounting that event. I love the way he says, I headed for the floorboard. I think that's fantastic. Okay, this next clip is, now we're going to go video. And this is a quick clip of Nate Gordon, who is, I believe, is the 2012 president of the American Polygraph Association. And he reviewed the multiple polygraphs taken by Travis and the rest of the logging crew members. And then he comments on that real quick. This is file 4.
From 1975 until 2008, I think 10 tests have now been administered. I think Travis himself has taken 3. One of the witnesses, I think Rogers, took 2. And then 4 other people who witnessed this were all tested. The likelihood that in 10 tests with 3 different examiners from 3 different agencies or companies who would probably go into the testing biased. I mean, you would think if you're testing someone about a UFO, as an examiner, you're probably thinking they're lying. The probability that all of these people could pass would be astronomical if they weren't telling the truth.
That's an incredible statement, and that really also adds to the credibility of this case all around. Next, we've got a clip with Steve Pierce, another one of the direct eyewitnesses, who was going to be here today, but I don't think he's going to make it. So I thought we'd show him now. And this is him and Travis at the location right where it happened. This is link number 3.
This is where we stopped, and this is where Travis jumped out.
Yeah, the truck skidded to a stop here. You know, Mike was probably responding as much to me yelling as anybody else yelling. You know, I said, stop the truck. Alan says, it's a spaceship. You know, everybody's yelling at once. So about really, it's all seemed simultaneous. And right up here in the clearing, outlined against the sky, was this metallic craft, just distinct as anything. This was not some little hazy, glowing ball of light off in the distance. This was, we could see that it was a vehicle as plain as anything. And it had this power to it and a very awesome, fearful sort of feel to it. As soon as we stopped the truck, you know, I started hurrying towards it. It was hovering just the other side of a pile of logging debris that was placed in the middle of the clearing. They always put them in the middle of a clearing so when they burn them, it won't damage any trees. And this craft was hovering in the clearing the other side of this pile of brush. And so as I hurried towards it, thinking that it was going to take off before I got that close, I could see it wasn't leaving, and I was getting a lot of second thoughts about what I was doing, you know, because I was hearing more and more of this incredible sound that it was making. And plus, Steve and the other guys in the truck were saying, you know, get away from there, get back in the truck. But, you know, I was looking up at it at about a 45-degree angle, and it was filling my whole view, you know, so it was probably at least 20 or 25 feet in diameter. But the logging debris kept me from getting any closer, and I don't know that I'd wanted to get much closer than that. I was looking up at it, and it was so smooth. It was metallic in areas and glowing in some areas, and it was both giving off light and reflecting light at the same time. Like when you have the television on and there's some light coming in the window, you can see the window reflected on the screen at the same time you're watching what's on the TV. I could see the trees reflected in this thing because it was so smooth and polished, and it was just awesome. You know, I don't know how else to describe it. It's just, you know, yeah, I was entranced by it, but just the sight of this thing was just incredible. But when it started to move and got louder, then I ducked for cover, and there was a log sticking out of this pile of logging debris, and I got down behind that, and they were saying, get out of there, get back in the truck. And so I decided, you know, long before that I wanted to get out of there, but I decided to make a run for the truck. And so when I stood up to sprint back to the truck, at that moment, my head and chest were closest to it. And that's when this energy came out of there and hit me. And it just felt like I'd been hit by a truck or something, you know. I had a very electrical shock sort of feeling, but I just almost immediately was unconscious.
Well, when he stands up, it starts rocking back and forth, and it's got a beeping noise to it and a high-pitched noise, and that bluish green light came out, and it zapped him, and he flies back about 15 feet, and he hits the ground, kind of like bounces a little bit, and just hits it, and he's just lying there. And that's.
What were you thinking at the time that happened?
I thought the world was coming to an end.
How about that line? I thought the world was coming to an end. I mean, wow, these guys right there. That's incredible. Okay, we got one more video clip. As many of you have probably heard, there's been a lot of chatter on the internet and in places about this event being a hoax, and that Mike Rogers has called it a hoax. Mike, of course, is Mike Rogers, the crew chief that took the loggers out there on that fateful night. And I brought him on my podcast last week to clear this up. So here he is definitively clearing up the record as to what happened and what he really did say. This is file number 5. Well, Mike, let's clear up. I know there's a lot of misconceptions about this case, and one of those areas is these quotes that have been attributed to you back in May. It seems some people have claimed that you say the entire Travis Walton event was a hoax. Can you set the record straight on this and let us know what actually happened?
Well, the big thing with that is this guy called Ryan Gordon. I met him one afternoon in person, and he first contacted me by asking to be my, his friend request on Facebook, and I checked out. I always check out anybody's site, or page. So I checked his out, and I didn't see anything wrong with it. He claimed to be a photographer, like a still photographer, I guess. And he had a couple of pictures of some pretty nice sunsets and stuff like that. And so, I accepted him, but there was no indication there of what he was up to. Okay. And within the next few days, he contacted me on the phone and then email. And to make a long story short, finally, I think it was April, the last day of April, he called me. He claims I called him. I did not. He called me, and I talked to him on the phone, and he wanted to know, he kept talking about hoax, blah, 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 I never could understand what in the world he was so hyped up about a hoax for. And so I was telling him, you know, even Travis and I have talked about, I said, we didn't do much in 96 because of this incident and the trouble. I couldn't get a crew and all that.
76, you mean?
Yeah, 76. But in 1977, Travis was actually working with me again back out there in the woods, not the full time, part of the time.
All right, so let's go back to this incident in, it sounds like early April 30th this year. Ryan Gordon, tell us, finish that up. What's he coming at?
He's said a great deal about Travis and about me. Me specifically, he claims to have recorded me. Well, I know that he recorded me, that's obvious, but because some of the words that he says are recognize my voice, and it is my voice. But he did something, because very easy to change a digital audio recording, very easy.
Well, if you cut off 2 words to the beginning of a sentence, if I said the words, anyway, he said, and then I say something, you could just drop those 2 words.
That's
and then
exactly
it
right.
Sounds like somebody said something.
Yeah. And I remember that the part that Ryan Gordon used of that whole conversation was where I was talking to Travis in 1977 about the specifically Philip Klass and his take on it. And his take was that it was all a hoax, of course. And of course, Ryan Gordon did something. I have no idea what he did, because I don't have the original recording, you know. He's the only one that has that. But a very interesting thing is, the next day when we went out to the site, we went in his vehicle and we went right out to the site. After going through the site, we walked down the bottom side and back up around, looking at the core samples and stuff. And at one point up there, I was standing almost exactly, I remember saying that, you know, this is just very close to where Travis Walton stood, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I was telling you, if you look down there, I says, I've measured it from the middle of the truck, okay, to where Travis stood is 93 feet, as close as I can calculate, you know, with the tape. And I was telling him, you know, and I looked around a bit and I told him, I said, and by the way, I recorded this, but I haven't released that yet, because recording anybody might be legal like that if you're the one talking, no, but it's still a bit dishonest, I guess you'd say, you know. So I haven't done that, but I will admit that I recorded it. Anyway, at one point I says, Ryan, there is no way this could be a hoax. And I have challenged him on Facebook 2 or 3 times to say different, and he won't, because he knows damn good and well I said that.
Well, that sounds unequivocal to me. So then the way this ran through the internet and ran through the UFO community, that you claim this is a hoax, is absolutely not true, in your opinion. That this guy, not in your opinion, that you're stating that you did not say that in fact this guy must have either misquoted you and or cut up digitally what you said. He's clearly lying about your position.
You know, here's a question for anybody. Wouldn't it be rather odd that for 45 plus years, I would stand behind not Travis necessarily, but the initial incident for over 45 years, and then a nobody that I never heard of before, I'm supposed to admit to him that it's all a hoax?
Exactly.
That doesn't make any sense at all, does it?
And this has led to other speculation, because there's some other people out there too now that have jumped on this, and there's speculation that what you guys saw was just this guard tower, the Gentry guard tower, and that was lit up from the inside. I see you laughing there.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I'm just telling you what's on the internet.
You know, I have been out to the site 3 times just this year. Okay. Once was with 1895 Films for this Travel Channel documentary that's coming up still.
Yep.
And then the following week, Saturday again, was with David Loomis of MUFON. He wanted to do some filming. I haven't seen whatever happened to that since, you know, but he wanted me to. And the next Saturday was with Ryan Gordon. I can tell you that even though there's been a fire has gone through there, okay, with all the trees on the top of the ridge basically gone. I mean, you can see clearly across to Gentry Tower, the Gentry Tower area, but you cannot see it from there, even with all the trees missing. And that particular night, there was lots of trees, you know, lots of trees, enough trees to basically, you know, had to get in just the right position to have even looked that direction.
Well, it's also about 4 miles away, isn't it?
Yeah, right. To the west, not exactly west, but close. And
Okay.
You can't see it. I'm quite certain you couldn't see it at night either, even all lit up. Even though Gentry Tower is not used for spotting fires anymore. They do that by some other means, satellite or something. I don't know.
Did you feel that Ryan may have been leading you down a path in a certain direction to discredit Travis or to discredit the other witnesses to try to get you to say
to discredit the whole thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it happened very slowly over a period of weeks, you know.
Feels very manipulative from here.
Oh yeah, and he was on a show. I was on a show. Can't remember the lady's name, and just like it was going to be a Zoom meeting, just like this one.
Mhm.
With you, it worked fine, okay. But this lady had a Spreaker connection thing. I was supposed to click on it again, just like I did with you, but it didn't work, and I couldn't understand that because it should have. And I had to do the show by phone. If I remember right, it was like an hour and a half or something like that. She did not tell me that Ryan Gordon was already scheduled to come on right after me. And he got through just fine, his picture and everything, no problem at all. And I sat there, and of course I watched that, okay? I was already hooked into that. And I thought, my gosh, that is cheap. That is very cheap, and it's tricky, and it's dishonest.
All right. So we clearly know that you did not claim this was a hoax, and that you were clearly manipulated by this person, Ryan, and the things that people are reading on the
Absolutely,
internet
yeah.
is bullshit. Okay. There you go. Right from the horse's mouth. That clears it up. Guys, we're going to take a lunch break right now. We'll be back here at 12 noon for the witness panel. If you'd like to ask Travis a question yourself, please put it here in the chat with your name and city, and we'll try to get Travis to answer it for you. See you at 12. Welcome back. This is going to be the witness panel now. These are the folks that were actually directly involved in the incident when it happened. Unfortunately, Steve Pierce didn't make it today, but we do have Mr. Travis Walton himself, the man who not only witnessed the UFO, but was the one who got zapped and taken aboard a craft. We have John Goulette, who was was also one of the loggers on that crew with Travis and was a first-hand witness to the UFO sighting. Also, Don Walton, who was there when Travis returned 5.5 days later, as Travis's brother, of course. And we have Richard Gonsalves, who grew up in Snowflake and was there at the time and knows all these guys and is best friends with Mike Rogers, the crew chief. In fact, to start us off, I would like to play a segment from that interview I did a week ago with Mike Rogers. And here's where Mike describes, to his best recollection, the events that happened that night. Let's take a listen to that first. It's about 8-9 minutes. It's file number 6.
That night, I was driving. The guys were noticing a light coming through the trees, and I had to keep my eyes on the road because it was narrow and there was humps in it, you know. And that, in fact, the only way to get in, we had to take a pick and a shovel and dig down one side of these, because the road was closed. If it wasn't for digging out the side of it, we couldn't have gotten over. We couldn't have got in there at all. And there was like all the way down to the bottom side. There was like 30 of these humps. So we spent like a day and a half just getting in there, just digging out to get in there.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And anyway, I kept my eyes on the road, and we were going up the hill, and the guys were seeing this light, and they were talking among themselves. I was just listening. I wasn't speculating. I was just trying to drive, and they were, one of them said it looked like a crashed airplane. Someone was saying some campers, campfire. Somebody said, got to be somebody's headlights, blah, blah, blah. And finally, as we got up closer, everybody got quiet. And then I rounded a corner, and there was a thicket of trees there, a little bit of a corner to the right. And there's a thicket of trees there. And then we broke into a clearing, and then somebody yelled, I don't even know who it was, maybe Travis, stop the truck. And so I did, but I couldn't see what they were looking at, because whatever it was up the ridge and off the ground. And you can imagine, I'm sitting here in the driver's seat, and this is on the right side of the truck, and whatever it was above. Because we couldn't see anything where we're going, where we couldn't see through the trees.
Sure.
And then when we broke in the clearing, it was directed to my right, so I couldn't see it. And so I noticed Travis jumped out, so I went ahead and turned the truck off and set the emergency brake.
Right.
Because I'm still on a bit of an incline. And Travis just, he was almost running at first. I just put it this way, a brisk walk, okay? And he didn't walk directly to it. He kind of walked to the right, as I'm looking at this way, he walked to the right, sort of, and then on up. But the closer he got to it, the slower he got, till pretty soon he was standing right in front of a brush pile, and this object looked to be directly above it. And you could see that it was totally three-dimensional. I mean,
so now you can see it. You've stopped it. You're not driving anymore.
Right.
You're looking at
what I had
Tell
to
us
do.
What you saw. What did the craft look like to you?
Well, once I put the emergency brake on and had the engine off, I leaned over, and Ken Peterson was kind of in my way, but I pushed him back and looked up, and I was just, I didn't know what to think at first. It was like a blank. It didn't register for a few seconds,
Sure.
And then once I could see it, and I remember looking around like this, and it was three-dimensional. It was lighted. It had like a metal framework, but it was very shiny. The outside surface of it was like all one piece, and it was shiny. It was like looking at a car at night with a light on, like a dome light on, and the light was reflecting. I mean, the windows were reflecting, what's around, and this particular thing, you couldn't see into it. These were like windows, but they were like, it was like two pie pans lip to lip. Okay.
Okay.
Like this.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I could see maybe there was like a dome on top. I wasn't sure about that. Some of the guys were saying there was. I don't know. I don't remember whether there was or not. It seemed like it was just barely in essence, if there was.
And how far away was this object, would you guess?
I don't know exactly how far away it is.
Well, you knew that Travis, we later found out that you measured Travis was 93 feet away.
Yeah.
So
from the middle of the truck.
So how far?
In other words, from Ken Peterson's view, put it that way.
Okay. Okay.
And 93 feet and some odd inches, but that's as close. 93 feet. That's pretty close. And the object was above that. It was somewhere around 20 feet in diameter.
20 feet in diameter. How far away from Travis is it? Would you guess?
Well, he looked to be looking up at a 45-degree angle. It was kind of the center of where it was. Okay. And since he was standing to the side, it was like, judged from where he was standing, where he was looking, it was 15, 20 feet in the air, and it's 20 feet in diameter. Okay.
Okay.
Totally three-dimensional. I mean, if I moved like my head like that, I could see it's totally round, Well, I know by the time Travis was hit by that, whatever it was, and I did not see that beam or whatever was hitting, because I was already apprehensive, and I had already turned the truck back on. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't released the emergency brake, but I had the truck on. And when I turned the key on, the whole woods out in front of me lit up a super bright, like bluish green.
Okay.
And the other guys remember that too. And
Some of
when
those saw the beam because you were looking
Yeah.
down to start the car.
Right,
They,
exactly.
They
Yeah.
saw
But
the
I saw, you know, I could see
Yeah.
it, and of course my eyes quickly jerked up to see that. Anyway, and just as quick, I turned back, you know, oops, to see that Travis was flying back, you know, through the air, and he lit on his back. I saw that part pretty vividly.
Wow.
And
that had to be scary as hell.
you know, it took me a couple of minutes to leave. Okay, I mean a couple of seconds. I had to release the emergency brake, but the guys were already telling me to get out of there, get the hell out of there, you know.
Sure.
And so I hit the gas. I don't know, it was like 5 seconds at the most. I hit the
Before
gas.
you drove away, let me ask you this, Mike. Did you hear a sound?
Oh yeah, there was a sound with it, and that really added to our fright, you know, because when we first stopped, it was motionless in the air, and it wasn't making any noise at all. As Travis got closer to it, it started making. First thing we heard was like a beeping sound, you know. And as he got even closer, it started making a louder sound. It started moving, and it sounded like an oscillating sound, like several high pitched and low or medium range sounds, kind of, you know, oscillating. I don't know if you ever know what that means, but it had that sound, and then finally there was a rumble to it that you could feel through the ground. I could feel it in the steering wheel.
Wow.
You know, and that right there is what gave me the most apprehension when it started rumbling like that. It sounded like a diesel engine.
Okay.
You know, like a locomotive, like on the Santa Fe Railroad, which I've seen many times. Yeah, I can't explain that, but very deep and chugging, you know.
Yep.
And it was more like that than anything, that low sound. And
so did that build up into the?
Yeah, and I hit the gas. Yep.
Yeah.
And it really was panic. I just didn't know what to think. I just they're yelling at me to go. I hit the gas and we went. But you know, as we went down the road, I remember knocking a mirror or two off and nearly hitting trees. I think one point I did even hit a smaller tree, and truck ricocheted off of it, because I just was. I could have wrecked that truck very easily.
I don't know how you guys weren't so terrified. I'm surprised you could even drive. I mean, it's incredible.
Well, I can tell you this. You heard a white knuckle scared. I looked at my hands and I had white knuckles.
Wow. Wow.
It's the only time that's ever happened to me.
Interesting.
I was so stunned, I didn't say much of anything to anybody. I just listened. Now, I did get out of the truck. In fact, they all got out of the truck.
Okay. And you're an eighth of a mile away from the thing, and you get out of the truck.
I can't remember if it's as I got out or as I was getting back in a few minutes or two later, but saw a light raise up, you know, from that direction. And it was so heavily wooded, there was just a light raising up, and it took off to the kind of horizontal almost, but above the trees and towards the northwest. And then that was just a straight, you know. But
you assumed it flew away at this point.
Yeah.
There we go. Incredible hearing that directly from Mike. Now let's start with John Goulette. John, you were there in the truck, and you saw this. How does Mike's account of what you just heard jive with your recollection now 46 years later?
Actually, Mike was pretty accurate on that. As we were driving down the road and we'd seen the light, ahead of us a ways, and you kind of see it in little spots, little flashes through the trees, because the trees were in the way, would be in the way and out of the way, in the way. But somebody was saying it was the moon, and I looked over to the left, and there was the moon, and then and somebody said an airplane crash. Well, I just got out of the military, seen a lot of airplane crashes, and I knew it wasn't an airplane crash. There was no movement, like plane movement and that. and there was, and then as Mike came around that bend, you know, as we got closer, you know, and I said there was no fire movement. You couldn't have been a fire or crash, a plane crash or something, and no flickering, nothing like that, you know, and as Mike came around that bend, you know, and like I said, when he came up to that clearing, I was sitting. Alan Dallas is by the door. I was in the back seat. It was a 2-seat crew cab, old international car, old piece of junk. But it got us there and back. But we you know, as he come around the bend, I had a pretty good view of it, and you know, I could see it, and I was leaning forward, looking around Alan Dallas, out kind of out the side window, you know, and kind of out the side, and you could see it through the front window. And man, before Mike had even stopped, he said Travis was opening that door and stepping out. I don't know why, but he was, you know. You know, he, you know, and then, like I said, when you could see Travis working up toward it, you know, like you said, he went around kind of to the right and angled up to it, and I could see him there. Travis he had a Levi jacket on, and he had his hands in his pockets, and he was kind of leaning down, you know, like he's kind of hiding behind the bush there, you know, the bushes there. And what the clearing was they had logged there, you know, 40 years before that. And the clearing was actually like where they had piled dead logs when they were logging. It's called a slash pile. And anyway, the thing was above the slash pile. And man, it was just there, just plain as day. Just, you know, oh man, it was just, and it looked absolutely perfect. You know what I mean? And it glowed. You could see it glow like through the walls of the craft. You know, now I didn't see anything that was like windows, but what it looked like to me was the framework of this craft. You know, and it had the framework, and then you know, whatever the outside skin was around it. You know, and it was kind of glowing through that, and kind of a yellowish white. But and then I heard that beeping noise, and then it started to rumble, and then I thought, oh man, and I turned my head for a second, and I looked over to the left, and the whole woods lit up kind of a bluish green, you know, and I looked back, and to me, you know, I'm sure, you know, like if you ever been in a car accident, how it seems like slow motion while it's happening.
Sure.
That's what it was like, you know. I'm sure that's why it gave me that effect. It looked to me like he was off the ground with his arms spread out. You know, he was just like spread eagle, flying back through the air, and he said he hit the ground on his back like that, and I thought that was when Mike had started the truck up, but you know, I really wasn't paying much attention to Mike, but you know, then he took off down the road, and as we're going down the road away from that, we're headed toward this. It's kind of a main back dirt road back there. It's called a rim road. We're headed toward that, and we stopped just before we got there, and we were arguing about going back, going to get help. They were hunting out at that time, I believe, and there was several vehicles that went down that rim road, and we thought, well, we'll go get some of those guys, you know, hunters with guns, and we'll go back, you know. But then we argued, you know, let's go back, let's go get help, but you know, we argued back and forth about that, and finally, you know, we decided, well, we got to go back. You know, you can't leave the guy back there. You got to go back. So everybody got back in the truck. There wasn't nobody going to be left alone out there in them dark woods after that just happened, you know.
No way.
Yeah, no way in hell. It was furthest thing from my mind.
Right.
But we headed, we headed back, and I saw what Mike was talking about, like how it kind of raised up and just shot off, just like in a second it was gone, just shot off across there like, faster than a shooting star, and just, and it was gone, and so, anyway, we're already getting, already loading up and heading back when that happened, and then we got back there to that clearing, exactly the same place where we saw it at, because the slash file was still there, and we Mike kind of angled the truck so the headlights were shining up into that clearing, and we had, I think, one flashlight. So we get out, and we start looking for Travis. Kind of, going in a perimeter around this clearing, looking in the trees, because you can see he ain't out there, So we're kind of, and we're in a line, pretty much a line, and got just scared to death, man. Just terrified. It was the most beautiful thing I ever saw in my life, that craft. It was so perfect. But then it was also the most terrifying thing, I'd seen some stuff during the Vietnam War, but that was the most terrified I'd ever been in my life.
Wow. What's going through your head? What do you think it is the moment you see it?
Oh, I had no doubt what it was. The first second I saw it, as soon as I saw it, I knew exactly what it was.
Wow.
And I knew it was nothing made on this earth. And we couldn't make anything that's so perfect, Wow. And as Mike said, it was three-dimensional. It was, about 20 feet off the ground. And it was just, now, to me, it looked kind of, it was, like Mike said, like two pie pans. But it did have those angles even,
Mm-hmm.
like you put two pipes. It did have those angles, and but I think it was Alan Dallas or Dwayne Smith saying he could see. Well, it couldn't have been Alan Dallas because man, he was buried down in the floorboard by then, But oh man, yeah, Alan, my brother, a good buddy. I brought him up there to work on that crew from Phoenix. We spent our teenage years together growing up down there.
Yeah.
And so he, and it was just absolutely perfect. But I could see, like I said, I could see the white yellowish glow of this craft, and then in it you could see kind of framework, kind of like bridge framework, but it was covered by this yellowish white skin, which I mean,
did it seem smooth, or did it seem like you could see rivets and things? Did it seem smooth to you?
No, you couldn't see anything like that. But you could see the darker, that's all you could see was a little darker where like the framework was.
I see.
And but you couldn't see through. No, you couldn't see who or what was inside.
And it's just hovering there, and you guys are just, you have to be
like,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, wow.
Oh, like Mike said, it was silent. When you first pulled up there and you shut off the truck, it was silent. It was, no noise except us yelling at Travis, get back, get your ass back here. Where you going?
Right, my God. God.
Yeah.
And then when you saw him fly back, what was going through your head when you see him getting thrown 15, 20 feet back in the air?
Well, I thought, my first thought was, oh my God, they killed him,
Yeah.
And, and then like Mike said, it was panic. Now we're running for our lives then, and Mike, like I said, driving down that road, and those old humps and the windy ass road, and that. You know, he did pretty good. You know, but it was.
That's hilarious. Yeah, we heard a clip
Yeah, but
earlier.
you know,
I was going to say,
I'm
John,
sorry,
that we
what?
heard a clip earlier where when that zapped Travis, Steve Pierce said he thought it was the end of the world. Like it was so terrifying.
It was absolutely terrifying. You know, like I've seen a lot of stuff, and not just Vietnam, but you know, I mean, before that, you know, I grew up in West Phoenix. It's pretty rough, and seen a lot of bad things happen there, and been involved in some pretty bad things that happened there, and I was never so afraid as I was that night.
Amazing. We heard an audio tape earlier with Travis talking to Dwayne Smith before he passed, and Dwayne said he can remember all of it as if it happened yesterday. Do you feel the same way?
You know, yeah, I do. Sure. It's never going to go away. It's always going to be, you know, I mean, it's always going to be vivid in my mind. You know,
when you experience something. Go ahead, John.
It was traumatic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like you said, a
car
accident where it stretches time.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
That's exactly what it was when that light. That's exactly what it was like when that light hit Travis. What it was in my mind. I'm not sure, you know, I don't think that's the way it really was, but that's what it was in my mind, like a car accident where it was kind of like slow motion, you know, or in a combat, you know, where things are happening 1,000 miles an hour around you, but you're seeing it all kind of in slow motion, you know.
Yeah, amazing. Must have been very hard to then come back to the reality of regular life and telling people this incredible story, and maybe some people don't believe you.
Well, you know, I stuck around there for about a week until just a couple of days after we all took the lie detector test, and Travis, you know, was back. And then I took off. I went down to a little town called Quartzsite, Arizona. And when nobody knew me, nobody knew I had any involvement in that story, and I did not talk about it for years. I never told anybody. I never mentioned it for years. But during the first week, you know, I mean, it got out right away. And during that first week, there was all kinds of, you know, stuff happening, you know, to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, accusations. Yeah, the murder accusations. The town meeting. Well, Snowflake said that, yeah, they killed Travis. Just a matter of time till we get the truth and we get all these guys in jail and all that, you know.
That had to be very, very hard to deal with.
It was, you know, you know, because, you know, we were completely innocent of anything. I don't remember if it was you, Don, or your brother that came into Mike's house that day and said, you don't tell me where my brother is, I'm going to stomp a mud hole in every one of you. You know, I'll never forget that. You know what, man? It was your brother. Completely understandable. You know, I mean, I'd have felt the same way with my brother, you know?
Sure.
But we were, you know, God, we were kind of like victims, you know, in a way. You know, we weren't, you know, I felt kind of victimized by the whole thing at that time, you know.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, that's you as if it's not traumatic enough what you went through. Now you got to come back and deal with this. Kind of like Vietnam vets, you know.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah,
right,
well, you know, I am a Vietnam vet, and but I did not. You know, I wasn't in a lot of combat. I'm very, very little, and so you know, I was supposed to be on a ship off the coast of Vietnam, but I worked in a weapons department in a branch that was called special weapons. Well, anyway, I ain't supposed to go into that agreement with the government. I was only 17. But anyway, you know, so.
All right, well, let's go to Travis.
Yeah,
Travis, what was it like when you hopped out of the truck there and you walked under this object? Do you remember what you were thinking when you saw it? What was going through your head at that time?
Oh, what was going through my head was that it was going to take off before I got very far at all. It was kind of an impulsive sort of a move, and it really, surprised the guys, and they were yelling at me, "What the hell are you doing?" But that kind of really just egged me on. I mean, that was just the way I was back then. But it was getting through to me, because the closer I got, the slower I got, because it's not going anywhere. Well, what the heck am I doing here? But I didn't want to show it. It was a lot cooler out there. So I was kind of like, huddling my jacket up to me. They say my hands were in my pocket. I don't remember that, but I was cold, and I was reacting to the cold. But no, it was the surface looked metallic to me, and smooth, totally blemishless, sort of giving off light and reflecting the surroundings at the same time. It's like if your television set is near a window, you can see the reflection of things outside the window on the glass of the TV, but at the same time the TV is giving you light. And so that was my impression of it. And is when that rumble started, it was so deep and powerful, I could feel it in my chest. And that's when I jumped for cover and got down behind the log, and they were saying, "Get the hell out of here, get the hell out of here." I didn't need to be told. I was thinking, I'm behind the safety of this log. Should I stay here somewhat safe, or should I run back? And I decided I'm running back. And when I stood up, that closed the distance between my head and the surface of this thing, and bam, I just felt this stunning force. I think Mike did the right thing. I think he was more concerned about rescue than maybe some of the guys. He was in a responsible position. His whole crew, he's responsible for their safety. So when they go, he was responding to them, saying, they were telling him, this is stuff they told me. They were saying, "Get this son of a bitch moving, go, go, go." And so he was driving recklessly. But adding to the panic was, they said that the rearview mirrors got smashed to the side of the truck, so he couldn't see behind. The crew equipment was behind, so you couldn't see out the back window. So Dwayne was telling me that Dwayne Smith, that Mike said, "Is it following us? Is it following us?" And nobody was answering. He's looking around, and those guys are just sitting there with white faces, totally stunned. But there was every reason for panic there, because he couldn't tell whether they were being pursued or not.
Well, I think if we saw something zap you, and at the time they thought killed you, why would you not think, well, now it's going to turn and zap us and kill us? That would be the natural thing to think. That's exactly what I would think was going to do.
So, I think Mike was in charge of the part of the crew that was saying, "We got to go back." I mean, part of the crew was saying, "Hell no, let's just go get help." But from what I hear about the discussion, the responsible thing to do was to attempt a rescue, if it was possible.
Wow. And when you first saw it, Travis, did you immediately know what you thought it was, or did you think it might be something else? What was your thought?
Well, Alan yelled out, "It's a flying saucer, it's a UFO or something." Nobody else said anything about what it was. I mean, it was obvious. And it definitely wasn't some giant rectangle on metal stilts, some people claim. It was a glowing disc hovering there, and there was no ladder going up to it. There was totally flying, and it wasn't just the crew that witnessed it flying off, but we got some of the reports that the sheriff had received in his files, people that were in the area that saw this light rise up and shoot off. One guy was over at Black Canyon Lake, and another guy was with his wife deer hunting.
That's the one I think we've got. Tracy Torme interviewed him.
Oh, well, that's interesting. I wasn't aware of that, but
yeah, we're gonna talk to Tracy about that later today. I think that's the same guy you're referring to. Yep, the hunter.
Yeah, well, you know, he was retired from military intelligence, but he wasn't just some run-of-the-mill guy trying to get attention or something. I mean, him and his wife both saw this.
It's incredible. Now, like Steve and John, all these guys like to point out that Mike certainly that's the extent of their experience, was seeing the UFO craft and you getting zapped, and then of course they took off like we talked about. The rest of the story, the part about being on board the craft, is yours and yours alone. And I know it's hard for you to revisit that, but I wonder if you could share with us a little bit about what that was like, opening your eyes after getting zapped, and you see what you think are hospital personnel or doctors of some kind, and then you realize these aren't regular people.
Well, it was slow. I was disoriented, and I felt really hurt. I felt mortally wounded, and a great deal of pain. And my vision was very blurry at first. But because the ceiling was so close, I figured I was on some elevated surface. And I just figured I must, I remembered before I could really orient myself or clear my thoughts that I must have got hurt, tripped and fallen, hit my head or something, running away from that thing, because that was my last impulse. So I figured I must have got hurt, and they took me to the hospital, and I could see these faces around me, but it was not clear enough to see that they weren't human at first. It was blurry. It was when my vision cleared that I realized that these creatures were not hospital personnel. I just freaked out. That gave me a shot of adrenaline that gave me the strength, which wasn't great at that point, but I was able to get my arm up and push one away, and he fell into the other one. I rolled away from him off the table, and the ones that I pushed went around the table and were going to join the one on toward the foot of the table, and they were coming towards me. I was backing up and screaming threats, trying to seem as dangerous as I could. I could hardly stand up. I was pretty weak. Really, I felt mortally wounded. I really felt like I was dying or something, Wow. But when I backed up, I bumped up against some kind of a bench or shelf or something. I just glanced quick enough to see amongst all these things something big enough to use as a weapon. I grabbed it and started swinging at them, even though they weren't close enough to hit. I was just making it clear, don't come any closer, I'm going to hit you. And they stopped. They extended their hands towards me, and I continued to scream and threaten. And then they abruptly just turned and went out the door, which was behind them. And that was part of the reason I was going to fight my way past them, was because the only door I could see was the one that was just past them.
And in this instant, the second you recognize they weren't human, you realize I'm on board this craft, and these beings are on this craft, right? That's when you.
Well, yeah, my whole perception at that time and for months afterwards was that this was kind of a hostile, an attack on myself. I felt mortally wounded, equating that they had done this to me. It was only over the years that I realized, well, if they were really, out to harm me, they never would have returned me at all.
Right.
To return me to the town nearest where it happened, where I could get help, just drop me off and take off, was something that, finally dawned on me that it had to be positive. I kept looking for some medical effects. My brother's immediate instinct was to get me examined by doctors. And 2 doctors came to his house immediately after, did an exam there, and then there were further tests in the office of one of them the next day. And he ordered further tests at I'm trying to think of the name, Barrows Neurological. And they did an EKG, an MMRI, anyway, the magnetic, resonance imaging.
MRI, yeah.
Yeah, MRI. And they also did something else that was really important, based on what came up later, was blood and urine samples that were put through the Maricopa County Medical Examiner's drug screen. Now, this is practically a law enforcement agency. This is what they use to determine people's guilt about things. And so those tests are as accurate as you could possibly have, going directly from the doctor to this agency, and revealed no trace of any drug in my body. So it was not a drug hallucination. To me, that was a really lame way to try to explain it away.
Yeah.
Because 7 people are not going to have the same drug trip, it's just silly. No drugs in my body at all, period.
Yeah, that's a ridiculous accusation, but at least let them check and let them know that that's not it. Let's get.
Well, they were looking for other things. Was there any unusual physiological
well, you had lost 12 pounds. We know that, right?
What happened to me? The dehydration, the starvation, or whatever it was. It could have been related to what I later concluded was attempts to repair me, to correct the damage.
Yeah. Well, let's bring Don in and ask him. Don, when you first saw Travis when he was returned, what was that moment like?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Don.
Yeah.
Go ahead. What was it like the first time you saw Travis after being gone 5.5 days?
Well, he looked like a skeleton compared to what the weight he normally carried. He'd lost quite a bit of weight. He's pretty gone. But it was a happy reunion, believe me. Mother came to my house that night right after this happened. She got to my place about 3:00 in the morning, and she was hysterical. And evidently, Martin Gillespie got a hold of her and explained to her what was going on. And he was the sheriff at that time. And so the next day, I worked for the Forest Service at that time. I was a Forest Service officer. And I went out to the site where this happened. And they were showing us around of what was happening. And there must have been a couple of hundred people out there on horseback and walking on motorcycles trying to find him. They covered every square inch of that rim, and there was no sign of him. So during that 5 days he was gone, that very next day, one of the Forest Service officers from Springerville, the headquarters over there for the Apache Sitgraves National Forest, brought a Geiger counter out. and we were all I was standing there with Martin Gillespie, Chuck Ellison, and who else was there? I think that was just the four of us that saw when they waved this needle around out in that clearing where Travis got hit. They turned that Geiger counter on, and the needle laid all the way over to the right. And so they moved us away from that area because of the radiation, but it was only in that small area.
Interesting.
So, and today I'm the only living person that's left who saw that Geiger counter, and that is what convinced me. But this was after Dwayne and I got into it at Mike's home. Is I was out there looking for a body. I wasn't looking for a lost person. These guys were into karate and that kind of stuff, and I just thought it was a horrible accident they were trying to cover up. So at Mike's house that morning, I come unhinged. Yeah, no. What John said. Pardon me?
That's what John was referring to earlier. That you were going after these guys and accusing them.
Well, it was Dwayne Smith I went after.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. And see, I didn't know these guys all that well. I had worked with some of them. You know, I worked for Mike for a spell, and so I knew these guys. And Kenny Peterson is the one person on that whole crew that wouldn't say "cock-off" he had a mouthful.
Wow.
I mean, he's a straight-laced Latter-day Saint. He would not give a falsehood. He was probably one of the most honest men I've ever known in my life. He's good people.
Okay, so you know him as being that way. You saw the Geiger counter, and you heard your brother Travis tell this story. Did you believe this story at that time?
After I got a look at Travis, I came to believe, and I've been in Travis's corner ever since. Travis is not a person who would do something like this to his family. You know, it brought a lot of grief to us, a lot of pain. We were ostracized. I mean, they expected us to cut and run or something. I don't know. But no, Travis says it happened. You can take it to the bank.
There you go.
Right, Trav? That's truth.
There you go. See, yeah. I love it.
Absolute truth.
And certainly Kenny Peterson.
You know, and
as
I
well,
told Travis. Yeah, and I don't know if Chuck Ellison is still with us or not. He was a good friend of mine. The last time I saw him was at one of these events down at Fort McDowell, and he had moved to Arkansas.
Okay.
And that's where he retired from. So yes, I absolutely believe that this happened to Travis, because he would not put his family through this.
Yeah, it's amazing
no
how
way, shape, or form.
The ripple effect of this affecting all of you guys, not just the logger guys and the guys that were with Travis and Travis himself. This for years has been tough on all of you.
It has. It certainly has. You know, I managed a cable system out on the East Coast for a while, and a lady come into my office, and she saw my last name, Mr. Walton, Don Walton, and she said, "Are you related to that guy in Arizona?" I was like, "Oh my word!" After all this time,
right?
So you know, it's people recognize the name, and sometimes it's good, and sometimes it's not. So, you know, each one of us have dealt with this in our own way. Unfortunately, our brother Dwayne is no longer with us. Oh man, we have one younger brother left, myself and Travis, and one sister. And our sister and her husband it caused them a lot of grief also, and they chose to divorce themselves from the incident.
It's understandable. A lot of these guys, even like Steve Pierce, has struggled with this over the years. If he wants to even talk about this anymore, like he was going to be here today, I think it just was too much for him.
Well, Steve and I have talked about it before, many years ago, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think out of all everybody on the crew, it affected Steve the most.
He was the youngest at the time when it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a traumatic thing.
So,
I don't know how any of these guys are still functioning, to be honest.
Well, it really cost Dwayne dearly. He was his whole business and friend circle, everything was real redneck oriented. He was a horse trainer and a farrier and a horseshoer, in other words, and he lost a whole bunch of business real fast. And
wow.
And he stood right by me, though. He wasn't going to give an inch.
All of this had a way on you too, Travis, as if you haven't gone through enough trauma with the actual incident, just like that, causing your family pain, causing your brother's business pain. It's a good time to bring in Richard here. Richard Gonsalves, why don't you tell us a little bit about the town of Snowflake at that time in 1975? This is a small town, right?
Yes, it was very small. I moved to Snowflake in 1954. I was 6 years old.
Okay.
And in 1960, the town was 100% Mormon. But in 1960, the paper mill came in and the construction workers and everybody pulled into the town, and the town doubled in size. And there was a lot of contention. Of course, they brought in the bars, and the local people didn't like that. And there was a lot of contention in the school board and everything. And when Travis's brothers were kind of hell raisers, and the town had all dirt streets, and they would peel up and down the streets and slide around the corners and do all kinds of things like that. So the police were on them trying. I guess you remember some of that, Don.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I certainly do. I was a little on the wild side.
So anyway, there was a little contention there. And then when Travis came up with this story, he had been taken by a UFO. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. The whole town just blew up. Nobody wanted to get along.
Did nobody believe them at the time, or what was that like?
Most of them didn't. They thought it went against their religious principles, and to tell a lie like this to cover up something that they had done, but they didn't know what. Nobody really wanted to.
You know that.
Go ahead, John.
That's why I always thought that it affected Kenny the most, because, as Don said, he was a straight-laced LDS, you know, and it went totally against what he had been taught and what he believed in. You know, Kenny still around today, but he won't have nothing to do with it. You know, I always thought it affected Kenny the most, and like Don said, he was the most honest, probably the best person on that crew. You know, no doubt.
I can't find someone to say
Yeah,
something
great guy.
bad about Kenny. Between Gary and you guys and everybody I've talked to investigating this, they just think that guy is as straight as an arrow. And his story
Very much so.
echoes your guys' account exactly the same. So I mean, he's completely on board, as all of them are. Nobody has really, none of the crew guys have ever challenged what's happened as far as what they witnessed. And you guys even dealt with people coming after. Was it Steve Pierce who had someone try to give him 10 grand to claim a hoax or something?
Yeah.
No, that was me. That was me.
That was you
that
too,
was
John?
me, Don.
Oh, Don, you had that too. Well, Steve had it also. They tried to get
I was
you to give
offered
10
by
grand
the
to call it a
national.
hoax?
Yes, the National Enquirer did that.
Really?
Which I found kind of odd. Some guy, Bob, what was that guy's name? I don't know. I spent a long time ago.
I know Philip Class was the one.
That's who went to Kenny, to Steve.
Yeah.
Yeah, it may have been, but it was National Enquirer, and they wanted me. They offered me, and they had a check already made out for 10 grand, and that was a lot of money back in the 70s. Back in 75, that was a lot of money. That'd probably be equivalent to 100,000 today. And I just, hey, this ain't happening. It's not going to happen. And I told them what they could do with their check.
You don't have to.
I don't know that he tried to do it or not, but I don't know if he tried to do it or not.
That's awesome.
But I have faith and trust in my younger brother. Travis is a good man. He's a good family man, and he got it. It was hard for everybody involved to get back on with their lives and try to be as normal as we possibly could.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say so, Richard?
Absolutely.
Amazing. You know, I talked to Steve Pierce about this when he got offered the 10 grand, and he said that, you know, he was really struggling at the time, and he thought about doing it just for the money. And the account he told me personally was that he was walking to the door, and the wife said, well, just tell me, you know, did this really happen? And he said, yes, it absolutely really happened. She said, then you can't take the money.
Yeah. Yes.
So he couldn't do it either. It's just like, and it's a shame that these guys come after you with false accusations and hoax. Look at Travis. Here we are 46 years later. And this year you guys had to deal with stuff in May that we've discussed before about guys trying to, you know, say this wasn't a spaceship. It was the guard tower that was 4 miles away.
Yeah. I've never in my life, I think it's called the Gentry Tower from what I've read on Facebook and that. But I've never in my life ever seen that tower. To this day, I still have never seen that tower. You know, there's no way, you know, you wouldn't have a tower down below the tree level. I mean, the whole point is to be above the tree level so you can see what's happening. You know, why would it be 20 feet off the ground? You know,
what would be the beam shooting out of it that lit up brighter, as Mike says, brighter than any sun? So I don't know. I just seem like it's a silly action, but I'm just saying
kind of
it's amazing that you guys have had to deal with this many years later. They're still coming after you with accusations. They came after you guys at times willing to pay you to call it a hoax. That's pretty astonishing to have to deal with all that outside nonsense instead of just the actual incident itself, as if that's not traumatic enough.
Well, you know what? That's not just them saying, well, you know, trying to get people to say it was a hoax isn't all they did. They also lied. And, you know, I thought for a while that Mike had agreed, you know, and that was a lie, you know. I mean, listen to the interview you just did with him. Now, obviously, what they said about Mike, you know, was a lie.
Yeah, they're trying to make Mike the bad guy here.
Oh yeah, there was a classic.
Mike's a good man.
Today,
Phil Class took.
I've known Mike a long time.
Hang on a sec. Phil Class took a sentence that Mike said that he was threatening Mike, to Steve, that if he would take the bribe, but Phil Klass took the middle out of the sentence, even though you know it really happened and would do it just for the money. Took that out and said, well, if he does that testimony, then he'll be bruised. Well, that's just as phony of a deceptive as you can get.
That's the hard part for me to struggle, that this is what you guys had to deal with. I feel
To the extent that they're willing to lie to make it go away.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it, isn't it?
It's a shame.
You know, this whole thing, you know, cost me my job at the Forest Service. Just for the simple fact it's a government agency. So, you know, it's affected a lot of people, you know, even my children, Travis's children, everybody.
Yeah.
You know, this isn't something that we wished on anybody. It's just a matter of fact that it's true and it happened.
Yeah, taking the people that came after you guys out of this for a second, just this experience itself, I'd like to ask each of you, John, let's start with you. How did this change your worldview after witnessing such a thing?
Well, you know what, man, it kind of opened my mind up to where, you know, I mean, I'm thinking, you know, wow, this is real. This really happened. Maybe, you know, other things, you know, people talk about happen, you know, but like I said, I went away, man, I think it was like, 10, 11 years before I ever talked about it until the movie came out, Fire in the Sky. I never talked about it to anybody. Never told a soul. My family, who knew this happened, you know, I got a large family. One person ever asked me anything about this, and they said, it was my sister Susan, and she goes, John, did this really happen? I said, yeah, and that was it.
Wow.
You know, that's my own family doesn't talk to me about it.
But how about for you personally, John? Does this make you feel differently about the world and our universe or anything like that?
Oh yeah, definitely. You know, I never thought about UFOs or none of that before this happened. You know, I was young and kind of wild, and you know, the main suspects in Travis's murder were me and Alan Dallas. You know, because of our past records and stuff, you know, and past histories, and you know, and we were buddies and all that. But you know, yeah, it changed a lot. You know, like I said, I went and I hid out. You know, and I wasn't ashamed of it, but I was kind of embarrassed by it. You know, that and I was tired of having to argue with people and tell them, you know, this is the truth. And I didn't say anything about it, man, for many years. I think the first time was the time that Don was talking about earlier down there by Fort McDowell. It was the first time. Yeah, first time I can remember ever.
Does it feel better now, John, that things have changed? Do you feel like it's opened up now, that it's a little more comfortable to talk about it? Like there's a lot more knowledge about this in the world today. Do you feel like it's more comfortable to talk about today?
Yes, definitely. Because I mean, you know, there's so many that have happened, you know, and then you know, like I said, you know, Don and Richard said that most people didn't believe it around there. I was born in Snowflake, you know, and I didn't grow up there, but I was born there, you know, and that, and it kind of hurt that they wouldn't believe us, you know, and then, but now you go back there, man, it's kind of a local legend, you know.
Good. How about you, Travis? Do you feel that this changed your worldview? I mean, you had much more profound than the rest of them.
Well, absolutely. You know, at first I thought of it as some kind of a, you know, attack by monstrous supernatural stuff. Only over time did I come to think that all the details pointed to a more benevolent intent there, that it was possibly even just an accident, perhaps even some sort of accidental discharge or lightning or something. But so what I'm left with is a much broader picture that is unfortunate that at the ground level, so many people are incapable of just reasoning and withholding judgment until they get the facts. Sigmund Freud had a famous quote that people need education to reality. So many people have a worldview, and then everything that comes along, they try to make it fit that, rather than being open to, I want to see how things really are. And no matter whether I like it or not, whether the consequences are pleasant or, choose the painful truth over the cherished illusion anytime. And that's a value that what's the point of free speech if you can't speak the truth? It can't be heard. We've got, and you see the effects everywhere. Advertising, entertainment, they have a message. It's other than just entertaining or educating. You see it all over the place where people have some sort of agenda that they're pushing, and they've lost sight of just the basics of facts and logic. It comes down to facts.
Travis, you brought up a point there about this being an accident. I mean, that is sort of one of the cornerstones of your case, is that it does feel to the community like it was an accident, because typically most of the cases where they've had contactee experiences, it's throughout their life, or they regress back when they were 4 or they're 8, or their parents had visitations and that kind of thing. You had none of that. This is a one-off, one-time experience that does feel, that's what makes it unique. Number one, you have 7 eyewitnesses, but also that this is a one-time, one-event scenario.
Well, polygraph aside, if nobody took a lie detector test from law enforcement at all, if you had 7 people giving testimony that they say witnessed a rape or a murder or a robbery, open and shut case in an American court of law. And then you add in multiple lie detector tests for everybody, and it's still not enough for people who just are resisting it because they'd rather it not happen rather than any sort of evidence.
That's the answer. They rather,
or they'd like to make a name for themselves. That, I proved this was a hoax or something. Like.
Oh yeah, I've had some
latest thing this year.
One guy claiming that he was the sheriff's nephew, and that when they discovered me, I had needle marks and drugs all over the place. No, that's not that. Those doctors head to toe exam never found any such thing. This guy was so full of
well, he was naked when they found him. Where's he going to hide his drugs?
Right. They make all kinds of claims just to get attention. I was there at that homecoming party that Travis was at. Well, there was no homecoming party. That was in the movie. So these kinds of stories that people told to get attention and attach themselves to something that was being talked about a lot is just part of the problem.
Do you feel the movie harmed you in ways because people think the movie was true to form, even though you have always said it's not?
In some ways, and I get blamed for that. But again, they gave me a copy of the script, and that stuff aboard the craft wasn't even in the script. It just skipped right over that. They knew I was not going to take kindly to that part of the
writer's license.
Yeah, there you go.
Creative license, yeah.
Great, yeah. And ain't nothing you can do about it.
They hadn't even figured out what they wanted to say about that, but they knew they weren't going to tell what I told. And so they were probably rummaging around in the special effects department and come up with a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, that shocks me always, as if the story's not incredible enough, word for word out of your mouth. That's what I always.
Well, think. I still have a copy of the script, and that part of where the craft is not in there.
Wow, interesting. That's a fascinating tidbit. Hey, Don, so even though you were not a direct eyewitness, you were so closely involved, and as you know, you're intimately aware of these guys, and you trust them wholly, and you feel this is real. Has that made your worldview change?
Yeah, it gave me a whole new perspective on life and then what's around us. How can we be so arrogant? Look up at the sky at night. Billions and upon billions of habitable planets out there. Why would we think we're the only ones in existence? That's ludicrous.
That's right.
But go ahead.
I'm just agreeing with you, Don. I think that's an excellent point.
Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah. And Travis was a few minutes ago was talking about people wanting to be hanger-ons or whatever. I was living in Wickenburg quite a few years ago, and Travis was on a talk show. And on this show, some guy had called in claiming to be a good friend of mine, and his facts were way off. It was as if somebody had heard about it and wanted to be part of it. I don't know. But we kind of debunked him right away. I called into the show and explained to them who I was, and so they put me on, and I told them then, this fellow doesn't know me, I don't know him. But he's just one of them guys, like Travis was describing.
Yeah, a real classic was a guy that said he worked with me on the log landing, and every morning I would come in and line my helmet, my hard hat with tinfoil, and this is baloney.
I remember that.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. That was Don doing that.
Serious, this guy saying, yeah, and he was serious. Yeah.
That's happened to, I bet, every one of us. Cause I've been, I worked at Walmart. I was like lower management there, and I smoked. There's a smoking area out there. I'm sitting out there, and there's this kid. I was probably 35 then. There's this kid about, maybe 20 at the most. Then, oh yeah, I know them guys. I went out, I partied with them all the time, and this and that. I'm thinking, I never seen this guy before in my life.
Yeah.
Amazing.
A lot of people try to put words in our mouths, and it's just not so.
That's a classic when they claim to know the people involved and they're talking to somebody who was involved.
Right.
Yes.
And they don't even realize it.
Yeah.
Amazing. Hey, Richard, have you noticed a change in Snowflake that the attitudes towards this incident? In the beginning, you said that most people did not believe them. And now John's saying it goes back and it's sort of like a legendary thing. Have you noticed a swing in the perception there?
Oh, absolutely. In the beginning, it was just ludicrous to think anybody would ever believe Travis's story. And through the years that the story came out and they got more information, and actually now he's more of a celebrity than anything else. I mean, people are happy to tell you, hey, I'm from Snowflake. That's where Travis is from.
Well, I'll tell you what's ludicrous and fantastical is anybody who says there's trillions of stars out there and trillions of planets, but this is the only one with any life. I mean, that's a weird theory. That's a far out belief. You really believe we're alone in the universe? That's what's fantastic.
Absolutely not, brother. Absolutely.
Well, what,
not.
man? If you follow that Big Bang theory, and our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy is kind of young compared to a lot of the universe. So these planets were out there. They developed way before we did.
5 billion years before us. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Well, it was only recently that NASA established that virtually every star has planets going around it. They didn't know that before. They weren't sure. Maybe there's some stars with no planets, but they figured it out with a technique where they observe microscopic dimming of the star at regular intervals. And if it's so regular, that's a sign that there's a planet passing between the observer and the star. So they announced just a year and a half ago that virtually every star has planets around it, about 10.
Right. Where just 25
It
years
almost
ago,
have
they
to.
thought it was 0.
Right.
Yeah.
This stuff moves glacially. Do you know that 100 years ago, the mainstream scientific position 100 years ago, not 100 years ago, was that the entirety of our little galaxy was the entire universe. It was only when we were able to build a telescope big enough to see that there were other galaxies that we realized that. So you see,
and now they realize that most of those points of light we see in the night sky are not stars at all. They're entire galaxies like the Milky Way.
Right.
And that's a lot of stars.
Oh yeah.
And it went,
I've always thought
from
that.
we don't believe there are any planets around these other stars to now we think it's very rare that they don't have planets. So, everything keeps moving this way. I know it's a glacial pace, but we keep learning more and more and more. And thank God for cases like this one that open people's eyes to this. I struggle personally. I have obviously looked very deeply at this case and have known Travis for a while, and I find it extremely compelling. Yet I am frustrated that much of the world, number one, doesn't know who he is, and number two, when they do learn, they still don't believe it. I struggle with that. How is that for you guys? Is it hard to think that you can't get your story out there if you know it to be true?
I don't know, man. Not really for me because like I said, I got pretty low key through the whole thing, even up to today, and I really don't care that they don't believe. I just, I'm better off left alone.
Take it or leave it. I mean, we're stuck with it anyway. So what are we gonna?
I know what happened. I know what happened. I was there. They want to believe it, believe it. If you don't, fine. I can understand you not believing it because you weren't there.
That's the same attitude these other guys, Kenny, Steve, we heard Dwayne talk. That seems to be the attitude of all you guys, that's pretty much like, look, I know what I saw. I know it's real. And I don't care what the rest of the world thinks. And that's great. That's great. What is your take on it?
Well, 46 years of trying to, just
46 years in a
I've
day.
never changed. I've never changed what I said ever. It's it's the same, and 46 years of that, and still you got, so I mean, you kind of, it's like, what do you call that? Like, you're talking to a wall. You just, they don't want to believe, then fine,
Yeah.
Well, I agree with you, John. 100%. They can either believe it or they don't. It's like a certain part of our anatomy. Everybody has one, just like an opinion.
Sure. Okay, I got that.
They mentioned earlier the famous Stanton Friedman thing that they mentioned earlier on an earlier panel was that, Stanton says how these guys are like, don't bother me with the facts. I've already made up my mind. And that frustrates me.
Yeah. And how can they make up their mind without having the facts?
And they're not even ashamed
how can they
of taking
ignore
that
the
approach to things.
Yeah.
Which if they
how can they just ignore the facts?
It's incredible to me. Incredible to me. They haven't looked at any of the evidence. They haven't listened to this. They haven't read his book. They haven't tried this. They've already made up their mind. What are you basing it on? Nothing.
Exactly.
Well, that thing about that tower, Now,
that's just laughable.
It also, Don, if correct me if I'm wrong, but they were doing controlled burns in that area. They wouldn't have had the towers manned. It wouldn't have been lit up.
Not November, no.
No, the fire danger was extremely low. They didn't need anybody in them towers,
No. Our
I've
fire
heard
season
stories
usually
that
ended.
they were manned at the time, and I've heard stories that they're locked up. But Steve was telling me here recently that he knew somebody who it was either him or somebody he knew had gone there during that search. So I need to get back with him and clarify what he meant by that. He said,
John.
I can prove you weren't in the tower. That's what Steve told me. So I didn't ask more about that.
John, do you feel that you wish this never happened to you, or are you glad that it happened to you?
You know what, man? Right here, right now, talking to y'all, and that I'm glad it happened. But you know, see, I lay low. I stayed out of it. People don't recognize me. Nobody knows. You know, I was involved with that. I drive a truck. In and out of truck stops. You know, crowded and things like that all the time. And I'm kind of glad for that. Oh, how you say, anonymity?
Yeah.
You know, where people
the
don't
anonymity
know.
that you still have. Travis's face is everywhere. Unfortunately, he's probably getting the brunt of the many backlashes. Although that's gotten better, right, Travis?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's gotten better, but it's been rough at times where people threaten to kill me or even in one case, rape my girlfriend. I mean, it was crazy stuff. But they don't realize that there are techniques on the internet. You can trace this stuff. We got the picture of the outside of the guy's house that was saying some of this stuff.
And over what? Over because you have this belief? I mean, isn't that just asinine?
Well, it's their own fear. It's their way of pushing back against something that scares them too much.
Okay, so do you feel that maybe that's the reason that some of this knowledge is suppressed by perhaps governments and things?
That know-it-alls, know-it-alls who just, I got it all figured out and there isn't room in my worldview for this.
Now, I know you've answered this many times, but since we just asked John, would you say if you feel 46 years and a day later that you wish this happened to you or never happened to you?
I wish it never happened. If I could just make it all go away and live a different life, I wouldn't hesitate.
Wow.
No, I don't think so. You know, there's one thing that I didn't mention earlier. You know, after we learned of Travis's abduction, around our mother's home, there's probably 200 or 300 people just standing out in the road and out on the sidewalk. And in that crowd was 2 Air Force officers from Operation Blue Book. And the news since this incident has said that Operation Blue Book has been out of use. I guess we did try.
Right. It was shut down.
They weren't investigating anything like these. But there was 2 officers. One was a major and the other one was a colonel.
Well, Dr. Heinz was in the program. He was responsible for coming up with stuff like swamp gas and what was the other one? Little Green Man, all kinds of silly stuff. But when he left Project Blue, he became a pro-UFO investigator. He opened up the Center for UFO Studies. So he came away from having a job where it was his job to make it look ridiculous to investigating the phenomenon.
Yeah. Don, do you want to tell us more about? Go ahead.
After that happened, I remember, now I wouldn't, I lived at Mike's house. Mike was my brother-in-law at the time. I lived at his house, and then I wouldn't go out in the daytime. I'd go out at night. But no matter where I went, there was always, when I got there, there was always a federal car. You could identify them. It was always a Plymouth that was either beige or whatever the color of the car was. The rims were colored the same thing, and there was always 2 guys sitting in it watching me walk by,
Men in black.
Or
wow. Did you experience that, Travis? Did you notice that? Travis, did you have that as well? Did you notice cars?
I have a lot of evidence that they were definitely monitoring things. Definitely. Not just me, but other guys in the crew too.
Richard, have you seen that or heard that in the town that they saw a lot of people that normally, it's a small town, you guys know each other. Were there
Right.
a lot of activity?
I personally haven't seen that. Mike Rogers has told me that he'd been approached by people several times.
There was a government crew conducting grid searches of the magnetic readings in the area. I didn't see them, but a reporter at the local paper did see them, and thought it was unusual that they would do that on the ground rather than from the air like you would expect.
Hey, Don, if you could talk to someone who was not in this community and what's that? Hey, Don, could if you were speaking to someone that was outside the UFO community and you had 2 minutes to talk to them, you've lived with this knowledge for 46 years. What would you say to that person if you had to share what you've learned or believe about this incident or about extraterrestrial life in the last 46 years? What would you say to them?
Well, I would tell them that, you know, what I said earlier about us being so arrogant to think we're the only ones here in this vast universe or space as far as it goes, however far it goes. Yes, it made me realize that, of course, there is other life out there. There are humanoids out there similar to us. Some of them may be exactly like us. We don't know. And we won't until they make, in this case, second contact, so to speak.
Has this experience made you more looking at other cases and things, or do you have an interest in this, or no?
I listened very carefully to some of the cases that have come up since this incident, and I see similarities, but then some of them are just so far off the wall that you know that they're just jumping on the bandwagon.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I understand that, man. I mean, the few conferences I did, you know, afterwards, you'd sit and talk with people, you know, and some of them, man, you know, you knew by looking in their eyes. Some of them would tell you these stories, and you could tell by looking at them that it really affected them.
Yes.
Some of them you look at, you know, and listen to the story, you thought, man, this guy's crazy as shit. You know, I'm sorry.
I'll go ahead and argue some of the extreme ones, you know, people who claim that people are abducted and then their bodies have been all dissected and found on the sidewalk somewhere. And I say, give me one name. And they give me a name. I go, no, not somebody that reported that, somebody that they identified their body. Give me one. And then they give me another name of somebody that's making the report. No. The person that was supposedly taken and dissected. Can't get a one.
Right. Obviously,
Richard was standing right there when I was doing that one time.
Travis, we've seen a lot of people. I feel like there's also some misinformation going on. So we got disinformation, misinformation, crazy people, and you have to weed that all out to get to these things. And it's a shame how cloudy these genuine stories get, like yours. And that's also hard for me to process. John, could you please answer that question too? If you had 2 minutes with somebody and you wanted to share with them what you felt you learned over the last 46 years of having this experience, lived with it, what would you say to them?
I'd tell them not to make this your life. You know, go ahead on with your life. Don't make this your life, because, you know, you're not going to gain. You know, you're going to battle, and just, you know, stick to your truth, but, you know, don't, that's the way I did. That's the only reason I said, don't make it your whole life.
You've been able to have a relatively normal life, just happen to have this one profound moment. Don't you feel that way, John?
Yeah, kind of. Man, you know,
Hey, there's a guy
I've
who
had a
gives,
lot of extraordinary experiences, but it wasn't UFOs, you know.
Well,
and
yeah, not to
things
that
like
level.
that,
I
you know.
meant. I
But
know you've had an incredible life on its own, but aside from this experience, but I meant, you know, nothing to this interstellar level.
no,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, man. I think I don't understand what you're asking me.
I was saying that, you know, you've been able to live. I know you've had extreme experiences of being in Vietnam and having a tough upbringing and things. I meant, other than this one incident of seeing this craft, your life has been relatively normal. Like you said, you're not recognized. You don't have to deal with this. You've pretty much been able to carry on a fairly normal, regular life.
Yeah, I have. I made it that way. You know, I mean, it took a long time for I even taught until that movie came out, and my wife worked at a theater in Blythe, California, and that movie came out, and they're going to show that. And my wife told her boss that, you know, she didn't know until about a year before that I had been part of this, and so she told her boss, and then they wanted me to come down there and do a question and answer. Well, I went in and I watched about 15 minutes of the movie, you know, and I thought, wow, you know, this really ain't quite right. So I walked out and went outside and drank a couple beers and, you know, smoked some cigarettes. And then after the movie's over, I went back in and did their question and answer, you know, but that,
John and I, you know, we've got two, you know, this incident that happened has affected us for all of our lives. And also, you know, as Vietnam vets, we both are still dealing with that. And we will be till the day we die with both of these things. So, you know, John's had a pretty hard road to hoe there, you know.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been exactly easy for me either. I spent 2 tours in Vietnam.
Yeah, so, there was no, you know, it's never been an easy life. It's, you know, and normal. No, I don't think so. You know, I've probably lived more life than 10 other people, you know.
Wow.
But, exactly.
You know, yeah, you know, Don, you know.
Yeah.
And,
we lived it, man.
Yeah, we lived it. We lived it. We survived it. We saw the ones beside us who didn't, you know, and things like that, you know. And, you know, geez.
We appreciate you guys sharing that with us. Travis, go ahead. You were going to say something there.
People don't understand just how vast the universe is. Mark D'Antonio gives a talk. He's on the paranormal circuit, and there are such a huge number of stars that even do the math. If even only 1 in 1,000,000 stars has a planet that has just ideal conditions to allow life, there are still billions of life-supporting planets out there. Their only objection that they cling to is that it's too far, they could never get here. And that's kind of arrogant, a little bit presumptuous. 400 years ago, we didn't have anything more technological than fire. Right. And that's only 400 years. And some of these systems are billions of years older than us. We don't know where it's going.
That's the answer right there. You laid that out perfectly, because we are, you know, an iPhone 100 years ago was unheard of. So just imagine. What about you, John? What would you say to somebody now that you know about this experience and have been involved in this? What would you say to somebody who didn't know anything about this? How would you share your thoughts?
Well, you know, I mean, you know, like you said, there's, you know, as I said before, the Milky Way galaxy is fairly young compared to the rest of it. I believe in the Big Bang Theory. I really do. But I also believe in God, because who else but a God could do that? You know, and they tell you, well, God wouldn't let you, God wouldn't have these other creatures and all that stuff. Well, why not? You know, I believe there's a thing in the Bible that says,
bring her number.
God.
Yes, they're definitely not
there's
mutually exclusive.
many castles in my kingdom.
No
Maybe
doubt
that's what
about
he's
that.
referring to.
Yep, I meant Richard. Richard, why don't you give your thoughts on that, bud?
Well, this hasn't really affected me personally. My life kind of went on. I've enjoyed, Travis has been part of my life throughout my whole life, but it didn't really affect me in large ways. My life has changed so many times. As of what they were saying about what's so many billions of stars out there, everybody has to think that, there is a possibility of more than what is on our Earth at this time. So
the preposterous theory is that it's not happened, that this is just such a miracle. It's the only one out of trillions upon trillions upon trillions. And that's the silly thinking.
Right. We are being inundated with questions for Travis. So I think what we'd like to do now is let these fellows go. We really, really sincerely appreciate you taking the time to share your honest stories with us. It's so much different hearing it firsthand from you guys than just seeing a documentary or watching a movie account. So we really appreciate it. Don and John and Richard, thank you for coming on and sharing with us directly. It really means a lot to all of us, and we appreciate it very much.
Well, we thank you very much.
I'm glad I got to talk to Don and Richard. I haven't seen them in many, many years. I've seen Travis not long ago. But
it's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been a long time, man. Glad to know you guys are okay and everything's going good.
That's great. Okay. I guess our part of this is done. Travis?
Yeah.
Keep your head up, son. Love you.
Love you too.
Take care.
Take care, Travis.
Thanks, guys.
See you, bro.
Thanks so long, man.
Okay, Travis.
Come on, Richard. Good to hear your voice.
Yes.
Thanks, Richard. You guys have been, Richard, thank you guys.
Yes.
Travis has been kind enough. He's going to take some questions from us now. And we wanted to, all these questions seem to go back to this, Travis. You guessed your time on the craft was around 15 minutes. Is that right for your conscious memory? You think that's about how much you remember?
Well, I don't know. When you're hysterical and panicked, it's real hard to estimate time, but it was brief. It certainly wasn't 5 full days of memories. And people say, well, don't you have more to tell than that? Well, not that I can remember.
Right. And then that's when you realized you were gone 5.5 days is when didn't Dwayne say to you, hey, you've got 5 days beard? Is that how?
Yeah, that was the shock. That was he could tell I thought it was the same night. He said, Travis, feel your face. And whoa, Mom's been worried about you. It's been so long.
Okay, let's take a look here. We've got a question from Charlottesville, Virginia. Gwen would like Travis to tell us more about the room with the stars, if you would, please.
Well, I viewed points of light. I don't think they were projected onto the wall as a projection, like a movie or something, because my movements did not shadow them. Walking and moving in the room didn't create a shadow. So it was something either generated by the wall or even some technology that allows you to see through the wall. Why they would need to see directly rather than say, navigate by some other, computations or something. I couldn't begin to guess why would they need to see around them, maybe for close quarter maneuvering amongst treetops or something like that. I don't know.
Here's a question from Gina in San Francisco. She would like to know if you've had any memories about more details when you were being inside the craft since it happened? Like, you had the memories in the beginning. Have you since had more memories come to you?
Maybe. When we started getting a lot of interviews, because, you know, it kind of died down for a while. And then when they did the movie, there was a lot more interviews. And I started having dreams about the beings in the blue suits. And I went to Tracy Torme and I said, do you think that this could be memories coming back? You know, you'd think that if the hypnosis could trigger them, that would have happened then. But he said, no, it's probably just because you're doing all these interviews. And then I asked him the same question years later, and he goes, oh, no, yeah, that's probably memories coming back. But maybe that's, he's being influenced by other cases that he had learned about in his investigations.
Robert was wondering if looking back, what you think the agenda was for the abductors or
well, you know, I'm not trying to represent myself as knowing what their agenda was. There was no direct verbal communication, but just piecing it together, I've had, you know, 46 years to think about it. It seems to me that it was probably my approach triggered an accident that injured me. I was taken aboard simply to revive me, and nothing more than that. And perhaps a reason for no message or any sort of communication other than just what it took to do the repairs. And I think it might have been effective. You know, I went 20 years of work with never calling in sick one time. I was worried that it may be the other way. I'd come down with some terrible disease.
Yogi would like to know, can you tell us more about the writing that you saw on the panel?
It wasn't really writing. It was symbols that were more like straight segmented lines that moved in response to my fiddling with things, but it didn't look like words to me. It didn't look like mathematics either, because there were no discrete symbols. It was just segmented lines with a variety in their spacing. Now, one with close segments would be interpreted one way, wider space another way, but then the angle that they crossed each other could change, but nothing that made any sense to me at all. You know, and I did some pretty good math in high school. I got a credit and a half in a 1 credit course in geometry, and I had some higher math in college, but I got no message off that screen that is decipherable to me.
Jordan from Oregon would like to know, can you describe more what these beings looked like? You know, did they resemble typical grays or something different? What was it like? Do you remember?
Well, people say typical grays, and they use the term humanoid, and they're very, people don't understand the term humanoid. Humanoid means 2 arms, 2 legs, a head on top, you know, 2 arms, hands. That's a vague general structure similar to humans. Some people use the term humanoid to mean they look just like humans, they could pass on Earth. That's not what humanoid means. So it may be sort of a biological inevitability that higher forms of life, and this is just my own personal theory, gravitate towards a humanoid form, because from a practical standpoint, that's the kind of thing that can manipulate matter and create things, you know, 2 hands. Like, you know, I can't see a giant squid or a giant crab being able to build a ship. It's just, I could be wrong, but it could be that what they call typical grays might not even be the same species at all. They might even come from different planets, but this is the kind of the direction that natural selection would take us. That's a very effective way of interacting with the environment.
Gina would like to know, since the incident, have you had any sort of good or bad health things that you would attribute to the experience?
Well, that's like I said, you know, I didn't call in sick one time for 20 years. Neither of my employers. One was Richard's company, and the other one was the paper mill. And I was there practically 12 hours a day for all those 20 years. Never took at the paper mill. I didn't take any of my vacations. I worked during the outages with the mechanics, and they were putting in 12-hour days, and never did feel any negative from it. Maybe I was working too hard. Maybe I was running away from these memories, but my fear that I would have some negative outcome, something negative on my children, never materialized. Everything's been fine. My children are super healthy and very smart and doing well.
You touched on this one already, but Christopher wants to know if you think you were actually mortally wounded initially during the encounter.
I do think that probably they probably saved my life at that point. It felt like something was terribly wrong inside. But apparently part of the resuscitation had already occurred when I awoke.
Interesting. Celine would like to know, since the event, have you had any other encounters or strange phenomenon that have happened to you?
Well, back in the day, the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization had a theory that anyone who had more than one sighting was not credible, because it was such a rare thing that people who are called repeaters are not to be, inspire confidence. But I don't think so. And I used to subscribe to the anthill theory. You know, if you were this advanced human being, you're walking by an anthill and you look down there and you spot one ant and you say, I think I'll stop and have a conversation with that ant. You know, that's preposterous. So they're saying these beings are so advanced that they wouldn't communicate with us at all. But now I go in the other direction, you know, because people would say, you know, I looked at it and I moved over this way and then it moved. And, you know, they're describing motions and things where it's reacting to them. And I was skeptical. I thought, no, we're just, why would they even pay any attention to us? But I go the other way. You know, we humans have something called the Utah Data Center. It's a gigantic computer in Utah. It takes millions of gallons of water to cool it. And supposedly it's recording every single electronic transmission on the face of the earth. Well, if humans can record that much, I would say a super advanced technology is perfectly capable of keeping track of things. In other words, if they saw you when you were 8 years old and they see you when you're 48, they know it's you. And to keep track of it is not so preposterous, because we have no idea what's possible when you can, when you have the ability to keep track of millions and billions. Just my theory, just
yeah,
just I'm thinking about it.
Do you have any any other experiences before the abduction experience to 1975?
Well, there were sightings, you know, and I think living in a remote area with clear skies most of the time, and being an outdoor person might increase the likelihood that you see something. You wouldn't believe how many people say, well, I never seen nothing like that. And I said, well, do you ever look up? I mean, and these are people who live their life indoors, and they expect, well, since I haven't seen it, then you haven't.
Right. just like the the ignorance of everybody is just amazing in their own self-worth. Angel would like to know if you could please tell us what you feel the best thing to come out of this experience was for you.
Me? Well, I would say insight into human nature, and the really the basic need as a part of our educational system to do, as Freud said, education to reality. How do you see through our own inborn tendencies to want to see things in terms of what you like, what fits the narrative, that's how they call it today. But, to interpret things first in terms of what you want to be true, rather than just saying, I want to find out what's true, whatever it is.
Do you have you ever spoke with Chris Bledsoe or exchanged discussions with him?
I'll bet I have. There's so many people. That name sounds familiar, but
yeah, he's one of the speakers. We've seen him at the events. He's in North Carolina or South Carolina, and
yeah, he sounds very familiar. I'm sure I've had a lot of conversations with him, but you wouldn't believe how many people I've met. And there's a lot of them that come up to me at conferences and say, remember when I talked to you 4.5 years ago, I come up to you and said X, Y, and Z. Well, I have to admit, no, I don't. I'm sorry, but there's just too much to remember. My head's full of stuff. It's overflowing.
That's right. What drives you to keep going out and going to these conferences and sharing your story?
I'd love to walk away. It'd be great, but it's not going to go away. People will continue to pontificate and advance preposterous explanations for things. And I think it's important for people to realize that it's ridiculous to think that we're alone in the universe. And maybe in some way push people in the direction of realizing that they do need quote, education to reality, or a refinement of the ability to think straight thinking. That would have rescued me from so much of what I've gone through if people just weren't so biased.
When you were on the craft, did you have telepathic or vocal communication?
Well, that's a question that comes up quite often. I didn't register anything. I had a squirmy feeling in my head that they may have been attempting to control me or soothe me in some way, but I was so terrified it wasn't getting through, or maybe it was just that I was too injured. That blast of energy hit me in the chest and the head or whatever, and there was some evidence of that from the MRI and the EKG. That disappeared with subsequent tests. So I think there could have been some kind of damage that interfered with sort of telepathic communication, but it probably was corrected.
Kate would like to know if any of your family members, children or grandparents or grandkids experienced any sort of abduction events or anomalies.
Well, if they did, I wouldn't talk about it.
We're not asking anything real specific or personal. Just does this go on in your family or just isolated?
I'm sure I have family members who had sightings. So like I said, we live in a remote area with clear skies and outdoor lifestyle of the whole family. So you'd be surprised how much more common it is for people to have some kind of a sighting they relate to me if they live around here and do live that kind of lifestyle. A lot of the negativity comes from people who live in cities with perpetually overcast skies and live indoor most of the time. It's a whole different thing, and there's no comparison.
Do you feel that it's possible that flash of light might have actually killed you and then you've been revived from the aliens?
Yeah, I definitely think that's probably what happened. Now, one theory, Dr. Persinger, believed in the theory of earthquake lights, which is a form of lightning that comes out of the ground. It's a piezoelectric effect, kind of similar to when crystals on a phonograph player are tweaked. They generate a current that's amplified and makes the music. But earthquake lights are supposedly lightning-like strikes that come from the ground up instead of the other way around. And that his theory was to try to explain my experience as a brain shock induced delusion. But the guys in the truck didn't get hit with any shot of electricity out of the ground. And it's possible that something like that happened and injured me, but it didn't. It was jumping from me to the craft just as a sort of a natural phenomenon. The Mogollon Rim area there is high and has, according to reports I read in the paper, the highest frequency of lightning strikes outside of the Everglades of any place in the United States. The highest frequency. Now that may be during our supposed what's called monsoon season when all the lightning happens, but the frequency of lightning strikes is quite high. You can walk down the rim road, and if you see a tree that's been hit by lightning, you're within sight of the next tree that's been hit by lightning. It doesn't always kill the tree. If you go to the Heber Overguard Chamber of Commerce, they got one right in the front yard. It's still a healthy tree, but you see this 2-inch wide strip going up the tree all the way up that's blasted. The bark is just blasted off of there because when the lightning hits the tree, it turns that sap to steam and it just explodes and blows the bark off in a strip. I was on one of Mike's crews when we found a tree. It was still on fire on our way to work. We got out and put the fire out. And so there is a high frequency of lightning strikes. It could have been some sort of where it hit the tree and I was the next closest thing to go to ground, something of that nature. But an accident, maybe the charge came from the propulsion unit, but it was probably fatal.
Wow.
1 million volts does a lot of damage, I would think.
Amazing. Do you believe that the phenomenon is spiritual, interdimensional, consciousness-based, or just in nature?
Well, it's all of those things, even spiritual. If you believe that, then it's a part of everything. So it's possible to explain everything in terms of physics. And for those who want to stick to that, that's sufficient information for that. Listen to Mark D'Antonio's talk. It's excellent in how he explains this stuff in layman's terms, based on real good in-depth understanding of the science.
Is it possible that the jumpsuits you saw on the beings were possibly a screen memory?
No, that's possible. There's all kinds of screen memories. I had an experience when I was like 4 years old or something, in which beings that weren't in those jumpsuits, they were in black ones, like Betty Hill saw. But it was just a single being. And I tried to convince my siblings that this was a real event. And I spent days trying to figure out how it escaped. But to this day, they remember, here all these many years later, 65 years later, whatever, they remember me telling them that and insisting that it was real, but they still insist that it was a dream. So I have no independent witnesses there. I don't have a crew of 6 with me.
That probably happens all the time, don't you think, with kids? And the parents just go, well, that must be just a dream.
Yeah.
What do you think about Skinwalker Ranch?
I haven't been there. I've talked to Steve. He's been there. It was pretty amazing. And I've heard rumors that, people were pretty intent about it, but I haven't been there, and so I have no personal experience to relate to that.
Matthew wants to know some clarification. If you were outside for 5.5 days in November, that doesn't seem plausible. Well, we don't think you were outside, right? We think you were probably...
No, that's impossible. And the doctors who examined me remarked that I was not in the condition of someone who had been outside for 5 days, because I wasn't dirty or frozen or it was 8 degrees at night in temperature. That would have killed me. So that idea that I was wandering around the forest was pretty quickly put to rest by just the low temperatures at the time.
I'm glad you went to the doctor and had all these tests and things checked, because we can always point to that. No drugs in the system, down 12 pounds.
Yeah, written reports, yes.
They're asking, what are your thoughts on orbs or other contact modalities?
I don't think that every UFO is a disc-shaped object. As a matter of fact, I think that probably that's a minority of the shape of the various types of craft. I think some are spherical and they're called orbs, there are triangular, there's what they call tic-tac shaped. It's a whole variety, and I think probably it could be one species visiting that has a multitude of different things. I mean, if you stand out by the highway, you're going to see a car and a truck and maybe a tractor, all kinds of different things. So, it's possible for them to have a variety of different vehicles and still be one entity. But again, it could be a multitude of different species coming here and with their own particular type of craft.
Jason would like to know, how long do you think you were on the mothership with human-looking beings, and do you remember any details about them?
I don't remember much in details unless the dreams are true, but it was probably most of the 5 days, but I don't know for sure, because when I woke up, I don't know how long I had been on that craft. If I had been in the dead or unconscious state for 4 of the days, then that would make the human-looking contact one just a single day. It all depends on at what point in the 5 days I woke up and fought back.
Kate would like to know what your thoughts are on the disclosure movement.
I think that it's not going, the popularity of people's demands are not going to affect them. The releases, I believe, it's just my opinion, in recent times is just because the government has found that it's untenable. It's making them look ridiculous to try to treat everybody as a wacko that makes a report. There's too many reports. The military is in a position to record some of these sightings. And so I think it was wise that they took this measured response. And I say measured because the first inkling that we had of this was late on a Friday. And that's the tactic they use when they want to make an announcement that doesn't get too much attention. There's nothing new over the weekend. By the time Monday comes around, the hubbub is settled down. So they wanted it out there, but didn't want to get too much attention to it. But maybe the understatement was a little too understated, because they actually made that release more than once. It was really
belly up to the bar, boys.
So the idea that we can just demand it is, I don't think, even in our best interest. The faction that says let's demand that they throw open the books and tell everything that's there is not in our best interest, because I'm sure some of it gives us a technological upper hand with people, countries that would love to destroy us. So anything they share with the American citizen is being shared with the world. I think it's great that they're kept in the dark about just how much technology our government might have recovered.
Kat would like to know, how'd you feel about being on the Polygraph game show on TV? So do you want to comment on that, Travis? Could you please?
Well, I was deceived, and what hasn't been made clear enough is that every single polygraph expert, real professionals, has called the whole thing a fraud. I got suckered in with the idea that there was prize money. I thought, oh, well, just pass the test and you get this prize money. I don't remember the total, but the amount. But there was a group of polygraph experts out of New York called Global Polygraph that had launched a campaign against that show before I was ever on it. They weren't out to defend Travis. They were just attacking the show as being so unprofessional, as destroying the reputation of polygraph. And there was a woman that had been falsely accused of cheating on her husband, and just for the shock and awe of it, they put her on the show and said that she was guilty of something she wasn't. She was filing suit against them. But the top experts in the field, the author of the top textbooks on the subject, have discredited the show. Cy Gilson, the Department of Public Safety, the police polygraph examiner, said it's a fraud and they should not be allowed to practice at all. So the whole thing was a disaster, but very quickly dismissed by real experts.
Yeah, there's been a lot of stuff about that show. Yeah. Any thoughts on, this is from Jeff Maynard, any thoughts on another movie possibly, and would this be a more accurate portrayal?
Well, that's being discussed, and I've got a meeting coming up on that subject. And that is my objective, that it's got to be more accurate. And there's some important understanding that needs to occur. And if we can't have that, then it's not going to happen. But it's not just a remake, but it's to take another shot at trying to tell it as I understand it today.
I have always felt this is the craziest thing in the world, why we have to embellish a story as incredible as the one that's been.
Well, you know, Tracy Torme, he'll be on the show, but he was not responsible for that sort of departures from reality. It wasn't him. Now, there's certain kinds of abbreviations that are necessary in order to take a real life story and tell it in a 2-hour movie or whatever. You know, you don't have time to even something like shrinking the crew from 7 crew members to 5 is something to make it more understandable. You can't introduce that many characters. You can't display who they are and how they are, and to an audience in such a brief time. So it was an abbreviation, but not a deception in that case. But and so that will probably continue. That, you know, in order to make a movie out of it, you gotta use the kinds of metaphors that movies make, but certainly not anything with cocoons full of goo and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Christopher asks, have you ever encountered the Men in Black or any other humanoid beings walking among us?
I could wonder, you know, I think there are definitely entities, probably from our government, that have taken a very close interest in what's going on here. And of course, you'd expect them to. They would be remiss falling down on their job if they didn't take a look at it, but they can't appear to endorse it by openly making these kinds of inquiries.
Judy has a great question here. What would you think if they came back for you, and what would you like? Would you like to visit with them again?
Well, you know, I've been asked that question before, and I thought, well, I think I can handle it better this time. But I had a sighting with a couple of other people a few years back, and I was totally surprised at the PTSD that I still had. But I'm still hopeful that I could control it better and get to ask questions, and even one question to get a good answer from.
Alpha would like to know how you feel about polygraph tests.
I think polygraphs have been totally unfairly maligned. Polygraph is something that's highly developed science. The CIA and the FBI use it to screen their own people. What's gone wrong with stupid shows like that television show or these little storefront operations that are just marital fidelity tests and stuff is that they've damaged the reputation of polygraph because they're not using proper procedure. This has been very thoroughly researched. The science is very sound. Some of the top experts can demonstrate that, and you do it with the scientific method. There was Discovery Channel show that one of the top authors of the textbooks on this subject had a deal where he had a whole number of people claiming that they could, quote, beat the test. Not one of them was able to fool the test. It was on the Discovery Channel. It was a special. And the better operators are immune to these silly things. People say, well, all you got to do is take some tranquilizers or drink a lot of whiskey and you won't show any stress reaction. Well, that's not true. What the examiner is also looking for is normal reactions to normal stress, the known lie test. And so that would also vanish if they had any kind of way of tranquilizing themselves and give a false reading. I don't know what the science of polygraph is, but they're quite confident that they can't be beat. But there probably is a tiny percentage. They say it's 99% accurate or whatever. But in the case of this incident, you have 7 people taking multiple tests. That tiny percentage of possible mistakes or whatever occurring with that vast of a sample is minuscule. It's like 1,000,000 to 1. And there's too much other thing. We're not dependent solely on polygraph. We have the testimony consistent through 46 years from all the men, and other kinds of things like changes in the growth of the trees, the magnetic readings, the Geiger counter readings. There's all kinds of things that add to the evidence that should be examined. So should polygraph be a substitute for thinking? Should it be a substitute for a good argument in court? No. It's just one tool that's very useful for authorities. Like I said, the government uses it to screen their own people. So I think it's highly reliable in the hands of the right people. The certification that's required should never, if you're going to go test your wife or your husband about something you suspect them of, make sure it's somebody that really is following how it's supposed to be. The experts have defined those kinds of conditions and that kind of testing pattern.
What do you think about the recent announcements from the Pentagon?
I think it's refreshing. I think it's helpful. I think that they've realized they can no longer keep asserting, brushing it away and saying, oh, nonsense, because it's not destroying the credibility of the witness, it's destroying their credibility. The population don't believe them when they say there's nothing to this. So they've been forced into a situation to concede things that the rest of the world's acknowledging too. It's not just the United States government, the other major governments acknowledge that these things have happened. There was some Air Force pilots in Chile that encountered an object that made a lot of news. So they would be totally alone by themselves to be the only ones still saying no sir, no sir, no sir, when the rest of the world's facing the facts. But why don't they land on the White House lawn? That wouldn't be a good idea. I think that would be destructive. Science fiction, the Star Trek series had this thing called the non-interference directive, to where on all these planets they went to, they didn't say, here we are from another planet, because it would be destructive. And it would be definitely destructive on this planet to announce that there's a vastly superior technology right here visiting. First thing people would want. They'd want a violent reaction. They might demand technology. I'm tired of paying $3, $4 a gallon for gas. So give us free energy. All those kinds of things would cause the collapse of economies and a worldwide collapse of civilization would not be constructive. So it's understandable that on the part of these beings, that it's out of consideration for us that they don't make an open, here we are kind of a thing. Although there are people in the paranormal community that have pitched for this and wanted to get petitions going to demand that the government throw open the books. But I think the way they're going about it is probably the proper situation. I also do not believe that our government's in some sort of conspiracy with these beings. It's they live on this planet too. I just don't see any evidence to support that. They're being quiet about things, as they should, but there's no evil plan to destroy humanity or take over the planet or anything. I don't go for that.
Lucy would like to know if it makes you angry when you look back to the abductors that they took you against your will.
Well, they didn't just attack the facts of the case. I'm talking about the observers. That what makes me angry that they didn't just attack the evidence that was presented. They attacked the personal reputations of the people involved, which is, totally irrelevant. And it was usually quite exaggerated in order to, if you can't attack the facts, attack the person delivering the news. So that was a thing. As far as I'm not angry about what happened, because I understand now my own carelessness, my own foolishness led to an accident that never would have happened if I'd have just stayed in the truck, as I really wish I had.
Do you feel that ETs in general are benevolent or malevolent or both?
I'd say that there's no hope for humanity at all if we think all we're going to do with future development is just become better at destroying. I mean, yeah, we can destroy entire cities with a single bomb now. Aren't we great? And then our technology further develops and we can destroy entire countries and entire planets. Gee whiz, is that all we got to look forward to? No, I would hope that intelligent life would advance far beyond any sort of warlike or destructive plan that people, that the idea of fighter jets doing dogfights in our skies with alien invaders, I don't subscribe to that at all. I think it's rather silly and not thinking it through.
Kat would like to know which documentary or film or interview account of your experience is the best. Is it that Paranormal Witness?
That's one of them. And then the Travis film. I have to say, every time I give that name of that film, I would never name a film after myself. That would be pretty egotistical, say the Travis, it was just their choice, and that's fine. I'm not criticizing it. I just want people to know I didn't name it. But those are two of the top documentaries that have been done. But coming up is also a new one coming up on the Travel Channel. I haven't seen it yet, but it's supposed to be an attempt to go even further, and we'll see.
Lastly here, let's ask, is there any advice for people who are afraid to tell their story that you could give them courage to continue and handle the repercussions of it?
Well, if they want to tell their story, go for it, but realize what's coming. It's not going to be as bad as what we went through. Everyone who's, John, Mike, Steve, all of us have suffered for it, but I think we're the pioneers. We're the trail breakers. A lot of the resistance has been beat back. In our case, and Mike did a fantastic job against the primary so-called debunker, was to demolish their case. And so that moves us forward. Some of the recent attempts to create some kind of a debunking film are ridiculous. These are recycled. These things were debunked a long time ago. And I mean real debunking, not these disinformation specialists like Phil Klass. But the evidence that Mike came up with that proved the dishonesty of Philip Klass, and there's even some evidence that I saw that suggests that he was on government payroll through the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA. Actual documents that have been released. Now, they're partially redacted, they just black out certain lines, but in a memo from J. Edgar Hoover himself to the director of the Central Intelligence Agency, they're talking about turning the matter of the investigation of Philip Klass, who, surprise, surprise, they were against because of possible him serving as a spy for our enemies. They had looked to see if Philip Klass had bought radio transmitting equipment and that sort of thing. So the FBI turned their investigation of Philip Klass over to the CIA. My theory is, I can't prove it, but is that that's where the $10,000 was coming from. I don't think Philip Klass, if he ever actually paid that bribe, was making that kind of money. He was bankrolled by them, and the evidence against Philip Klass just showed there was so much disinformation, so much false reporting, and so much ridiculousness. We were Mike and I were on a show. What was it? Larry King, I think, and Phil Klass was on there. They didn't dare put him on this in the same studio with us, but he came in on a monitor, and he gave the theory that I was lying about hitting the rocky ground because the medical test didn't show any bruises. There should have been bruises, he says. And then in the same interview, he's saying that blast of energy that looked so much like a lightning bolt or fire and flame, should have caught the thick carpet of pine needles. Those are Phil Klass's words. So which was it, Phil? Was it rocky ground that should have left bruises on me that would show up on a medical exam? Or was it covered with a thick carpet of pine needles that would have cushioned my fall, but should have caught fire from the beam? Well, the beam hit me, it didn't hit the pine needles, but it just shows the kind of have it both ways sort of thing that we were up against. And I think Mike and I on Larry King showed Phil Klass to look ridiculous, and there was evidence of that. Later, I saw the saying that I used on that phrase I used there was, this guy is saying absence of evidence is evidence of absence. And I saw that where politicians picked that up and started using it. So I don't know, maybe it was a coincidence, but I think we won that battle in the end, that they were shown to be the bogus people.
No doubt.
Travis, bag of dirty tricks.
The chat room is also full of thank you. Everyone's very appreciative of you being so open and honest and sharing and taking the time with us. I would like to echo that personally. I really, really, once again, you've been very generous with your time. It's very meaningful and powerful and important to me and many of these people listening to you today. And we believe you. We're behind you, and we appreciate you sharing everything with us and taking the time. And,
well, I would like to encourage the audience to stick around for these other speakers because they've got some important things to say too.
We're going to be back in 5 minutes with the filmmaker panel. We'll see
All
you
right.
then, guys.
Well, good night.
Thanks, Travis.